you know what a ribeye steak's like. It's got fat everywhere. And I had it on this plate, and there was this like rendered fat that was now lying in the bottom of the plate that was like slushing around, you know. And Pam was in the kitchen, and I looked at this, and I looked at her, and I literally started giggling. It was like, are we really going to eat this, you know?
I think the tough part is that we don't even want to impose this line of thinking so much as we just want people to know it's an option, because we didn't have that option.
Yes.
We didn't know.
That was my whole point. Like, how did I not know at 52 about this?
Right.
And
Decades
so you
of,
feel obliged to try and further that message.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, Doug, but what you don't know is that she actually yelled at me. He said she was angrier than hell. And basically saying, like, you're my doctor. Why didn't you tell me this? How come you didn't teach me this? And he was mortified.
Tell me who you are and what you do.
Hey, Dave.
That's me, though.
Yeah, you know I am. My name's Doug Reynolds, and I currently am the founder and CEO of Low Carb USA, and the founder and president of the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, or the SMHP. And between the two organizations, we basically exist to try to teach practitioners especially, but also patients and members of the public whose doctors won't support them, how to utilize carbohydrate reduction as a way of either just maintaining the best health or actually helping to prevent, reverse, or at least stall the progression of a bunch of chronic diseases.
Before we get fully into that,
Yes.
You brought us something.
I did.
These are, what is this?
It's called biltong.
Biltong.
Yeah, it's spelled Biltong.
Uh-huh.
It's an Afrikaans word that means dried meat, basically. And it's the South African version of jerky. But it's like there's no comparison.
What's the main difference?
So with jerky, it's cut very thin, and then they put a bunch of preservatives and stuff on it normally, and put it in some kind of thing to bake it, almost to dry it. And my opinion is it's awful. Biltong was developed in South Africa back in the day when they had those ox wagon, when the Flemish people actually settled the South African coast, and they were moving inland in ox wagons, and they obviously needed a way to preserve food for a long time with no refrigeration and stuff. And they developed this mechanism of preserving meat so that they could take it with them. And what they even did is, like, along the way, if they actually had someone that could hunt, and they got out and got some deer of some kind, they would turn it into biltong as they were traveling as well, so that they could keep utilizing it for a long time instead of it going off. And it's the difference here is, like, we'll cut it into thick slices with the grain. And it's maybe an inch, sometimes 1.5 inches thick, and you get these big slabs. And I'll get you a picture that your editor can put into the feed here. But then we pack it into a big box with a bunch of rock salt, and leave it for about 2 hours. This is my way of doing it, right? Leave it for about 2 hours, and you'll see a whole lot of juices have basically been extracted from the meat, so it's lying almost in this pool of juices. Then I take it out, clean all the salt off, and then spice it. and the core spice is coriander. I was like, if it doesn't have coriander on it, it's not biltong.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't. No, it's just not biltong. That gives its unique flavor, and then my go-to is just coriander and pepper, black pepper. I use white pepper if I can, because then it doesn't have the oxalates in the black sea shells of that. So I'm not a huge thing about oxalates and that, but where I can, I try and eliminate them. So where I can use white pepper, I do, but black pepper is okay if I can't get it. And then, so you spread it onto these. First of all, vinegar, though. Let me go back. So once I've got it cleaned, it's got a whole pile of meat. I take each piece and spray it with, I just use white vinegar. Some people advocate malt vinegar and red wine vinegar and all of that. And it all gives it a slightly different flavor. But white vinegar to me is good. The main reason for that is to prevent molding and any other kind of, I was going to say chochos, which is like another Afrikaans term for bugs, growing on the meat, right, while it's curing. But now that you've had it in the salt, you'll actually feel it as you get the pieces out. It's actually, they're almost like stiffer now. They're not all as floppy as they were when you first put them in, because it's already started to extract some of the moisture from it. And then you put the spices on, the vinegar and then the spices, and then literally put a little hook through it and hang it on something. I've got this IKEA plastic shelving in my office that's got basically slats in it. And I take paper clips and I bend them open and I put the one piece through the meat and hook the other piece over the slats in on this shelf. And then I've got a fan on a little side desk next to my office, next to my desk, and I put that on nice and gently, and you can basically see the pieces like rocking, just gently like this. You know, it's not a hurricane, but it's just gentle rocking. Get some airflow over it, and depending on the thickness of the pieces, and also the time of year, so depending on the humidity, the first pieces literally come off the next day. So you've got this big round, like eye of round is normally the meat that I use, because it's the one piece that you can get that's got the grain running the whole way through the piece of meat. So now I cut these big thick slices on it, but now because it's rounded, like the very end pieces aren't going to be thin and sort of half roundish like that. And so those pieces are literally, by the next morning, they've come off. And the thicker pieces, 3 days. I've had a couple of pieces, really thick ones, go 4 days before I've actually taken them off. And then, and so it's like steak. You know, to me, it's actually a crime to overcook steak. Right, medium rare, not even medium rare is the way steak needs to be. And it's the same with this. It's like at some point, and everybody's going to have their preference, right? But at some point, it's done for your liking. And at that point, you've got to stop it drying out. And so I pull it, and then I don't know where the camera is, but this is I vacuum seal it. Like this is one of the pieces, right? It was hanging like that. Uh-huh. And then I put it in the deep freeze, and that just halts everything. And then
how long does it keep when frozen?
How long is a piece of string?
Right.
Well, I mean, the point is that there's cuts of meat and stuff like that in the deep freeze that you go and look finally, it's got freezer burn and all sorts of stuff. It's been in there for 2 years. This stuff will never stay in the deep freeze for 2 years because it just gets eaten.
Yeah, so, I was going to say.
Yeah, no,
it's too hard to find out.
Right. So, but the thing is that it's basically cured, right? It's not a piece of raw meat. It's actually cured. And so on the ox wagon trails and stuff, they didn't have a way to vacuum seal stuff or freeze it or whatever. And so if you didn't take it off, it just keeps drying until it is black all the way through, and it is rock hard. Like you bash it, it's like a baseball bat or something. It's that hard. But what they would do is then just when they get into a camp, they get their pot out and they start heating up some water, and they just toss a couple of these things into the water, and it basically just reconfigures again. And so, by the evening, they can make stew out of it or whatever. But it literally doesn't go off. So you can keep it forever. It's probably not quite true, but as long as you're ever going to be able to go without eating it.
Listening to you talk about this is a delight, because it's like a religion, right? It's like there's different parts of the structure of how you're ultimately marshaling this process with all this tender care.
And
being aware of every single aspect of it. And I'm so fascinated because I see this with a lot of folks who especially become more carnivore in their diet. Is you'd think, and certainly this is the case with me, I like keto and I like a lot of animal-based low carb, frankly, because I can be a bit lazier about it. You throw a slab of meat on. But I tend to find there are a lot of folks who actually find a love of cooking, who actually become more obsessed with getting the right taste for just this one key ingredient that's central to their diet.
Yeah. But just talking of that, I mean, you can get me in the kitchen if you paid me until I started keto. And it's like now Pam has to chase me out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? It's like we get in each other's way because we both want to create something. It's my whole attitude towards the kitchen and cooking and everything has changed completely. But this is like part of our culture in South Africa. I've told people there's a lot more independent butchers there, as opposed you'll go into Pick and Pay or something, which is a bit like Vaughn's or Ralph's or something like that here, and they have a butchery section in this big supermarket. But they also have, in every little shopping center you go to, there's going to be a butcher. And you walk into the butcher and there's biltong hanging. Again, I'll give you a picture to put in the feed. But there's biltong hanging at rows of it. And they literally give you a little plastic glove and you go and feel the pieces to see it's your preferred dryness, right? And you point to the pieces you want and they take it off, and either they'll slice it for you right there on the machine, or I just used to take it whole. And I always used to just sit in the car and whenever you're sitting around or whatever, just cut pieces off with a penknife. And that was how I grew up eating it. So every supermarket, every butcher is literally and there's people that will travel 4 hours each way on a Saturday to go to a butcher somewhere out of town that makes the biltong the way they like it, because none of these butchers will share their recipe, right? And there's all these little secret things that they do, and it somehow people find one that they absolutely love and they will travel days to go find it, or get it. But even in the I'm trying to think of a Best Buy or something like that, right? And you're in the checkout queue. There's all this stuff for kids to grab and things on the way to the checkout counter, but it's all candies and sugar and keto stuff that's not really keto. And there will always be packaged biltong as well, but that's kind of more of a commercial thing. And somehow, and you put it in a bag that's sealed. It's just, I don't know whether there's something that they do to it, commercially, that they have to add something to get it past the safety people or whatever. I'm not sure, but there's no bad biltong, but there's stuff that's not as stuff that like this that's much better than anything like that you would get in a packet.
Tell me how you yourself found your way into low carb.
So it's kind of a long story.
We're good on long stories.
We're good on long stories, yeah. So part of the stuff that we don't talk about often is that my consulting job as an engineer kind of dried up at some point, and I was trying to get into something else, and just at that time I actually got approached by someone trying to sell me Amway, and I had no idea. I literally had never heard of Amway. I don't know how that's possible, but
were you in the United States at this time?
I was in the United States at that time. I was actually an old South African running friend of mine who now lived in Australia and had found Amway and become quite a big producer or whatever they call it in Amway, and was trying to interest me in joining his group. Expanding into another country because I was in the States by that stage. Yeah, I mean, I was in the States and I never heard of Amway. How is that possible? I must have had my head in the sand, man. I'm telling you. So when he pitched it to me, it was like, it kind of the basic concept makes sense, right? Everybody joins. The thing that the way they sell it, when they sold it to me, was like you buy your own stuff and you get some small commissions for that, but then you invite other people, and then whatever they buy their own stuff. There's no one trying to sell it it just made sense to me. It was a model that if everybody did that and didn't lie through their teeth and cause bad perceptions of the organization, and that I felt like it had merit, and so I joined. And so Pam often says, you know what, if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here today, because I was a software engineer, and was still sort of working in that, like trying to get back into that after the consulting thing went away. But I was kind of doing this on the side with the idea that I would build a big team and eventually do this permanently, but that obviously never happened. But the people that we met, and I threw myself into this as I do with most things, and put a lot of money into it, put a ton of time into it, and all of that, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, Amway's, I think, is generally referred to as multi-level marketing.
Correct.
Which does have a bit of a stigma attached to it. But
correct.
I think where you're going, and is very relevant, is a lot of folks don't have the skill set to just cold call or approach people. That's
me especially.
Yeah, that's something you have to build and work at.
But you have to be able to lie. See, that was what it's true. That's my thing. I can't lie. I just can't bullshit people. You know what I mean? And when you hear the people, and they have these meetings, and I was attending all the time, listening to try and learn, but they were talking such crap, and I just couldn't bring myself to do that. So I was trying to give them the real deal, which kind of made sense to me. If the stigma didn't exist, and it wasn't so difficult to get, because when I found out, I went out there, everybody else knew about Amway that I hadn't. And so every time you mention Amway, it was like, well, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And I even lost friends through trying to get them involved in this.
But you bring up an important point that I think is going to be germane to this larger story, which is that it's possible a lot of these multi-level marketing systems would work were it not for the fact that that's such a commodity. Being somebody who can sell at a bit of an exaggeration, like they would say, it's creative marketing. I'm giving you this sense of a bigger experience and greater benefit of the thing I'm selling you than what you get. That's just good salesmanship, right? But in reality, there's some degree with which you're leaving people with an impression that turns out to be wrong. Even if you can try to claim, hey, I didn't say X, Y, Z, there's still an exaggeration. Sometimes things that are just false directly, right? And that's
what gives it that's what's given it over time such a stigma.
Right.
Is because of all this bullshitting that's gone on. For these guys to big down, there's guys that make millions, right? Build these massive teams. But when you hear how they sell it and you hear how they talk about it, it's BS. And so at the end of the day, I just couldn't do it, but I learned, we met some amazing people that we're still friends with. And I learned a lot about what didn't work and what did work, and what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. And I think, we're going to talk about the book a bit later, but I feel like that time when I actually pulled the trigger to start Low Carb USA, I felt like everything that I had gone through in my life had positioned me to have the courage to believe that I could do this and to actually pull the trigger and go ahead and do that. And this experience was a large part of our life for a few years, and it trying to make it work, and the stuff that I learned from that was critical. One of the guys that we met, he was in a different group, but they kind of started doing these big meetings together and stuff. The guy that I was under, and he was an Apache pilot. No, I don't think he was a pilot, but he was a crew member on an Apache, and he served as on Marine One. So that's not an Apache. That's probably a Black Hawk or something like that. So you don't get to do that without being quite an impressive person, right? And he was, and so he started another multi-level marketing project that was with exogenous ketones. And another multi-level marketing thing, but the product was just exogenous ketones.
And so this was the first time you heard keto or ketogenic.
Right. So I get this email that says, ketones, an alternative source of fuel to glucose or something like that, or a better source of fuel to glucose. And again, like with Amway, I had never heard of a ketone. I don't know what I was doing in my life. I must have been walking around with my head in the sand. And it was seriously. Because now I talk to people. Everybody's heard about at least ketones and ketoacidosis. And nobody in my family ever had diabetes or anything like that. And so maybe because of that, I hadn't. But I didn't know what a ketone was.
I think to be fair, there's quite a big difference between how many people at that time, because this was what, 2016? 2015,
yeah.
Right. In 2015, the keto diet was not that prominent at all.
No.
And so by comparison, definitely more people will have heard of Amway than they would have heard of a ketone.
Right. That's true. But yeah, I just looked up ketones, right? And I started looking at it, and it just went down this rabbit hole, like for three weeks. I literally buried myself. I found every video, which wasn't there wasn't like thousands, millions of videos that are available out there now. Like you were saying, back then there wasn't much going on in the field at all, and so. But there was a lot of papers and there was enough to keep me busy for 3 weeks. But by the end of that 3 weeks, I was sold. As I looked, I'm an engineer, right? And so if you look at the data, it's like now I understand, because at that point I was starting to go downhill. I was a distance runner running 90 kilometer races and stuff like that, but my knees were sore. I was putting on weight every year and wasn't able to get it off again. I thought I was just being lazy and not running enough, and I was just at the right place when this message came, and it explained everything. It explained why I was putting on this bit of weight that I couldn't get rid of. Why I just felt like I was going backwards, and why back when I was in my 30s I was bulletproof, right? And now I wasn't anymore. And I just spoke to me, and all the data made sense as an engineer. And so at that stage, this was a brand new startup company, and they'd actually run out of product. So I couldn't buy any exogenous ketones from them anyway. But over the last 3 weeks, it was like, why don't I just do this diet, eliminate all this rubbish from my diet? And
it's definitely worth emphasizing. You can just make your own ketones.
Yeah, which is what I learned over those last 3 weeks, right?
I mean, you can consume a product that brings it from the outside. That's why it's called exogenous ketones. But hey, there's the original ketone production.
So I decided, okay, well, let's do this. So now over those last 3 weeks, a couple of times, like in the evenings or something, I'd said to Pam, hey, this is amazing stuff that I'm learning, and kind of tried to explain to her what I'd been learning, but she wasn't really taking it on board. And then I this day I got up and I said, okay, we're going shopping. And I think I said something like, wait, I got to get my list. And she said to me, wait, what? You're going shopping and you've got a list? Those are literally her words to me. So we go to the supermarket, and as all of us who do this now have learned, you literally stick around the outside of the store. Don't go down any of the aisles, because everything down the aisles is just full of sugar. But buying everything that I used to get before was like the leanest steak possible. And I remember even cutting the tiniest little bit of external fat off a piece of steak or a piece of meat before I would cook it and stuff. Now I'm buying these big ribeye steaks with fat everywhere, and full cream, heavy cream, and full cream yogurt, and all that stuff around the outside of the store. And we went home, and the condos where we were staying had a barbecue pit outside each block of units. And so I went down there. What was nice about it was actually a wood fire charcoal thing. It wasn't a gas unit, and I much prefer cooking on a real fire. And so I went down there, and I had these 2 ribeye steaks that I cooked on there, and I put them on this big plate, and I brought them back inside. And so now you know what a ribeye steak's like. It's got fat everywhere, and I had it on this plate, and there was this rendered fat that was now lying in the bottom of the plate that is slushing around. And Pam was in the kitchen, and I looked at this, and I looked at her, and I literally started giggling. It was like, are we really going to eat this?
Yeah.
But I had learned enough and seen enough of the data that I believed it. And that was enough to get me to sit down and literally cut this up and eat it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to fellow engineers that have stories just like this. And it's what happened to me. The second year in a row, I get an A1C of 6.1. I'm like, man, I can't develop diabetes like the rest of my family. Mm-hmm. So I start looking at the ADA and the Mayo Institute, and they're not making complete sense because they seem to be saying two things at the same time. Yeah, carbohydrates relate back to glucose, but at that time that I was looking, they still said, but you need to get a certain amount of carbs per meal. That was literally part of the recommendation. Mm-hmm. But being a software engineer, we like forums. I want to go to the forums. I want to see what the people are saying. Are they in agreement? And there was diabetes.co.uk, which was coming up strong. Mm-hmm. And just a whole community that were saying, yeah. Don't pay attention to any of that. Bring your carbohydrates down a lot. And naturally, I'm thinking, how do you survive then? Because I don't want to have fat. I don't want to have carbs. I mean, is this 100% protein? Is it going to be rapid starvation, et cetera? Mm. Like, no. Fat's fine. In fact, saturated fat's fine. And I kept thinking, I mean,
wait, what?
Is it? Am I really ready to throw out all of this? But at the end of the day, as an engineer, our boss is the data. The data, we can't unlearn the data.
Right.
We can't. Once it weighs enough, it flips us. Even if we know the vast majority of authority that's out there is saying, if they can't make the case, if they're not even showing up at the debate to make the case in the counter direction, mm-hmm. Well, we know because we've seen engineers our whole life. Software engineers are a great example because we've watched the rise of Bill Gates, mm-hmm. of Steve Jobs, of Zuckerberg, all in the face of claims of what's possible and what's impossible and what they managed to do anyway, right?
Right.
So yes, I had a similar experience where I'm reading all of this. I come to the conclusion at a minimum I need to find out how actually insulin resistant I am. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I had a weekend where I had a glucometer, my first glucometer, and I'm taking my blood after meals.
Yeah.
Just to see if I could at least tolerate the meals I typically consume. And no, my glucose would remain high all the way into the morning following. And it was just depressing. But I remember it was a Sunday evening. I was feeling really down. And I turned to my wife at one point. I said, I'm going to have to get into cooking. And she said, what?
Yeah.
I said, there's no getting around it. In order for me to pursue being low carb, I'm just going to have to start getting the hang of cooking a bit more. And yeah, my life likewise transformed. And my wife likewise was like, you're going to go shopping. You're going to get food. And the same thing. I'm sitting with steaks and putting pats of butter on it because it wasn't fatty enough.
Right.
And I was eating it with the butter. And I thought, wow, this is really happening. I really do feel satiated. Mm. And I still have my glucometer. Wow, yeah, actually my glucose isn't going up and staying up. So maybe I'm heading in the right direction. And then, I'm guessing you're going to have a story similar to mine. I started losing weight. But I wasn't trying to lose weight. Right. I was used to, all the times I lost weight was hard, backbreaking effort of intentionally being hungry, of eat less, and work at it. Just live with being hungry. But here I was getting plentiful, not being hungry at all. And I'm just like dropping weight. And I dropped 25, 30 pounds, I want to say, something like that. And my BMI wasn't even that bad. It was like 25 or 26. Mm-hmm. And I seemed very comparable to the rest of my classmates. But then at that point, I thought, well, this is it. Like this is my future. I'll both be able to avoid type 2 diabetes, and actually I frankly like what it's doing for me. Until that one blood test that obviously spun everything out. But
Right. Everything went down the rabbit hole after that, right?
yeah, but my larger point is I really do feel like as engineers, we're kind of wired differently. We sort of assume things are more complex. And frankly, we sort of assume people are wrong a lot of times. That
Right. So you don't take anything on face value.
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
you question, and as we should, we question everything,
Including ourselves.
including what we're doing now.
Yeah, all the
should,
time.
You know, it was Gary Taubes, I think is the one that I heard first say it, was like, you know, when you're doing a trial, you should be trying to prove what you believe wrong. If you're constantly trying to prove it wrong and not able to, that's what supports what you believe. And it's the same with this. Like, just because this is what we believe right now doesn't mean that we may still learn that it's all wrong and that there's actually a different truth. But unless we keep challenging that, either we're going to keep reinforcing it, or we're going to start seeing that maybe there's potentially another answer.
So to skip ahead a little bit, you're now fully into the diet. At what point did you decide to do the, let's just say, tiny bit ambitious goal of actually organizing a conference around this?
Yeah, I think we do need to go back a little bit, though, because you said something about doing it for, I did it for weight loss. I'd stood on the scale just before I got that email, and I was 35 pounds over what I considered to be my fighting weight when I used to run.
Oh, wow. So you really were.
But again, I wasn't fat. If you'd see a picture, I actually, before I realized that I shouldn't have, I found a couple of pictures of myself back then and literally deleted them. because it's like, no, people mustn't see me looking like this. But not realizing that being able to show that difference was actually really important. But I was like, if you look at me, I was just like thicker, like it was like this layer all the way around. I was chubbier in the neck jowls, on my face, but my entire body was just, but more like a barrel. You know what I mean? But not way like a huge barrel. It was just a little bit. But that was 35 pounds worth of weight. There's probably some visceral fat in there as well, somewhere.
Almost certainly. That's the irony, is a lot of times when they say you carry your weight well, it usually means there's
a lot of visceral
fat. A bit
fat
more packing that's going on in there. But
yeah, so I was horrified. I literally never used to weigh myself because I didn't. And I remember a couple of times we were in this rented house. It was a really crappy rented house, and going into the bathroom, brushing my teeth or something, and getting that feeling like this mirror is a bit bent.
Right. There must be a fun house.
Yeah, no, because
mirror.
I don't look like that. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't huge, but I was packing it on slightly, and then I got on the scale, and I was 35 pounds over what I used to weigh when I was running all the time and doing well.
Back to data.
And it was like,
the numbers don't lie.
That, and then this email came, and then I saw all of this, and it explained to me why I had put on this weight and everything. It all made sense. I hadn't had any tests, and I didn't know what my BMI was. I still, I just knew that I was overweight, and I believe that was why I was struggling to run. And so that's when I started doing it. And over the 6 months, over 6 months, that weight came back down to what I was in my 30s. And my knees cleared up. I remember we had these we were doing martial arts at the time, and we were doing like 4 classes a week, and we were traveling from downtown San Diego way up north to this gym that we had found. It was really cool. And that was a lot of driving. And so eventually we convinced the trainer to let us do the teenagers class before the seniors class at the end of the day. And then we just did the 2 classes back to back, and then we only did it twice a week. And so those are 90 minutes of hectic workout, right? And I would get home and just be exhausted, get into bed, and I literally felt like I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I had to crawl to the toilet almost, you know what I mean? And I'd sit on the toilet. I'm supposed to be going for a run now. I was like, dude, I can't even walk. What are you talking about?
Isn't it fascinating, though? I'm sure you experienced what I was experiencing, which is that we all just assume it's father time.
Yeah, it is.
It's just
I'm
what
getting
happens.
old. I'm getting old.
You're getting old.
Exactly.
It's just going to happen. It happens to everybody.
Yeah, and that's what people keep telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
When you complain about, oh yeah, it happened to me. It happened to everyone. You know, it's just normal. And all of this stuff. So now I'm starting on this keto diet, and like I'm jumping out of bed in the morning,
right,
and going for a run. You know, my knees have stopped hurting. Skin issues around my ears and stuff cleared up. All things that I wasn't expecting. Just after a while, you sort of look back and saying like, hey, this stuff's all different, and my weight's coming down. I just felt like $1 million, and I was only doing it initially to lose some weight. So, you know, get down the road 6 months, all the weight's come off. I'm feeling tremendous. And obviously at work and everything, like wherever we can, you're trying to tell people about it, right? And it's become like Fight Club, like just don't talk about it, right? And so it was my birthday. And
what year is this?
So now my birthday is 2016. We heard about this in about the July of 2015. That was when we first started doing it. January 2016, end of the month, so 26th of January, end of the month. And we had gone out with all our work colleagues for dinner because it was my birthday. And they had all drifted off. And so now it was just Pam and myself left. And now we started talking about it again because we couldn't talk about it before. They just told us to shut up. They didn't want to hear about it anymore. And it was like, how is it that I'm at that stage 52 or something? Like, how is it that I'd never heard about this? You know, and I'm 52 and no one ever told me that I could feel so much better and I could be so much healthier if I just changed what I was eating. And there were a couple of small conferences on, I think, Jeff's Low Carb. So there was Low Carb Denver, which was Vail or something at that stage. He was still doing that so that he could all go skiing. And I think the Metabolic Health Summit in Florida. Those were the only 2 that I was aware of, and they were both small. And I was saying to Pam, like, San Diego summer, like destination thing, we need to put 1,000 people in the room. I was like slamming my fist. And so the next morning I got up and I went and I started looking. Pam was still sleeping, and I got up and started looking people up. That the people that I had seen in they'd done a low carb event in Cape Town, all the video, and down under in Australia, and a lot of those videos were online. And so that was a lot of the learning I did was by listening to all of those videos. And so and now you start looking these people up, and you start to realize who the really more famous, prominent, high profile people, which were the ones that were sort of had the biggest followings and stuff. And I looked up I'd never been to one of these other low carb conferences. I had no idea. And I looked up Gary Taubes, Steve Finney, Jeff Folick, and another guy. And wrote to them, like looked them up on their website, get contact us thing. Like I didn't even have an email for them. Wrote to them and said, hey, I'm going to put this conference on in San Diego and I think I'd already just said, I said in July, would you be interested in being a part of it? And Jeff Folick, I think I had the wrong email address for. And but in the end, I found, months later, I found the correct address and wrote to him, and he actually agreed to come. So he actually spoke at that first one.
Wow.
Steve Finney wrote to me and said, you realize there's other people that do these conferences, something to the effect of like, how much money have you got? Are you able to fund some research or something, rather than do something everybody else is doing? And that wasn't the case. In fact, actual fact, we were humongously in debt. We were working. I was COO of operations of a company that was literally hadn't paid us for 2 years. Pam and I were working there, and share options and all that kind of stuff. But it never happened, and so all our savings were gone. We were maxed out every credit card we had, basically, and it was.
But you had enough credit that you were taking the chance on this conference.
No, we had nothing.
Okay, how do you make the conference happen? Because they usually require.
Well, so this was the deal, right? So now we know nothing about. We thought we knew. So the company that we worked for before put on a couple of big conferences, and I thought I knew what I was doing with to put on a conference, but turns out I didn't. So the CEO of this company had actually done all the negotiations with the hotel contracts and all of that, and we never saw that. I didn't even know those things existed. And what we did in the end was just kind of organize it, right? Get the people there and plan the talks and just logistic stuff.
You're just kind of running on the
yeah,
wheel
but
of
I thought
passion.
I know how to put on a conference. We put on conferences all the time.
But it's really worth inserting here for people who don't realize, as you just told us, you're not some prominent voice yourself. You're not connected.
No, I'm not.
You don't have these deep ties so that you can call in favors. You literally are cold calling a whole bunch of these high profile low carbers. The only thing that might have been working for you to some degree is the lack of conferences that existed, while there was a shared excitement.
Yes.
On possibly a bunch of these other speakers going, yeah, I do want to support.
And an ignorance of what was really involved and how hard
exactly.
it was. Because if I'd known how hard it was, I wouldn't have done it. I'm pretty sure, as brave as I think I am, I'm not that brave. I don't think I would have done it.
See, we'll get to my conference, but see, I have even less of an excuse because I know how hard they are, and I still did co-sign.
You still went and did it, yeah. Yeah. I think that all these ones that pop up for one time, it's like people think, there's a way to make money, because they see the ticket price times, especially me, 1,000 people. I literally thought that that I was actually going to be able to come out ahead on this thing. It was so the hotel. So we go to the hotel now and find out that there's this big contract that you have to sign, right? That I didn't read properly to start with. But one of the things was that they had these progressive payments, right? So by this date, you have to pay them a lot of thousands And by this date, another lot of thousands. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to have 1,000 people. So, start out with a big discount on ticket prices to get some money in the beginning. And then, we'll just pay as the money comes in. We'll pay the hotel. But the way it's structured is like by the time you get in there, you've literally paid for the event already.
Right.
And we realized very quickly that it's way more difficult to put 1,000 bums in seats than we realized. And so,
and again, you don't have the established presence you have now.
No, but even now it's hard to put 1,000. We still haven't put 1,000 people in the room, right? It's really hard. COVID hasn't helped because we were building up. We had about 650 back before COVID in San Diego.
Which is, by the way, a very successful conference. Getting 650.
Of course. At the time, it was the biggest one that Denver got bigger a year or two, a year later than that. That was like right before COVID. 2019, I think Jeff had a really big one in Denver.
Good old pandemic.
Yeah. And then 2020 was the first one that I ever went. It's the first conference I ever went to that wasn't my own. Because Jeff suddenly said to me like, hey, I didn't even think of this. Why don't I just give you tickets? Because we literally couldn't afford to go. And I used my Marriott points to actually buy plane tickets and stay in a hotel. And Jeff gave us tickets, and that's how we got to go. And then we got there and the whole world shut down because that was when COVID happened. But to go back to our event, we started. But we came to these deadlines and we didn't have the money. And so now we kind of paid, because we were collecting some money, just not enough. And so we paid what we could and literally had zero in the bank account and just kept going. And they were getting more and more agitated until we got to, and I ended up to talk about it. I'm giving a lot away of what I talk about in the book, but like 3 weeks before, the guy said to us, like, dude, like, you need to pay us a bunch of money. And we didn't have it. And we ended up arranging a meeting with him. And he came down. And he didn't even take us up to an office or his office or to a conference room somewhere or whatever. He literally stood in the middle of the foyer there with everybody around and started having this conversation with us about, oh, you need to pay us some money, otherwise we're going to cancel this event. And I said to him, dude, I've given you every cent we've got. You're not going to give that money back if you cancel this event. And I've got people coming from all over the country, from a bunch of different countries around the world. How am I going to, I can't refund their money. We can't some of them are like about to get on a plane. Like, we can't cancel this thing. Are you kidding me? I just said, like, we're still selling tickets. I'll find a way to pay for this, but I'll borrow money, I don't care, but we can't cancel. And somehow he agreed. And you can read the book to get the rest of the story.
Yeah,
but it's
do we have the book handy?
It's over here. Yeah. I don't know how to show that. Sure. There you go. So this is the road to metabolic health. It's actually this camera. Right?
Oh, this camera. Here we go.
Yeah.
So this book incorporates some of these stories.
Right. So it starts out literally back when my dad was born in Borneo, in Sarawak, back in 1930, and his father was a commissioner of police and was involved in ending the process of, or the practice of headhunting in that area, which I said I don't know. It's probably got nothing to do with why I'm here, but it's a cool story. That's kind of how I start the book. But then they moved to South Africa, and he grows up there, and then wants to go move to Rhodesia at the time, which is now Zimbabwe, and how I came along, and how my life was, that I've trying to understand what it is about what I went through that made me sit down that morning after we'd been at my birthday dinner and start writing to people and saying,
just will this thing into...
I didn't even make it. It was like, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just like writing to people. We put in on an event in July. I don't even know where that came from. And that was 6 months. We had no website, no social media presence, like not a small, like no social media presence. Nothing.
And just to further set the context, if I'm not mistaken, Low Carb Vail was the first version of Jeffrey Gerber's conference.
Correct.
That was in 2016. Hadn't yet happened. And that one, I remember, had 150 people that came. Granted, it was in Vail, but still, you didn't really have existing data that this was an explosive like trend that you could count on 1,000 people to come at. So it's so true. You want to know one of my favorite factoids about George Washington, of course, of the first president and the general of the Continental Army, was that he lost more battles than he won. And when you look back and you read the history of him, he still just kept the troops, the Continental Army, in line. He still managed to inspire them and say, we're going to lose this battle, sure, but we're going to win the war. We're going to win the war. And you could argue that his stubbornness at doing what seemed to be an absolutely, like a more seasoned general who actually had a lot of battle experience would probably say, we need to actually surrender. We need to just broker a peace. And this was kind of a crazy idea. Let's just try to save as many heads as we can, because that would look like the more practical, appropriate decision. Yeah. That there was that level of seemingly fearless drive to, I realize none of this really makes sense given the numbers on the ground, but I believe it's right. And that's kind of like the other side of the two sides of the coin with engineering, is sometimes the data is what leads you to the right conclusions. But at the same time, engineers proactively take measures that they don't have data on hand for, but that they know is the right move. And this is really a great story that you're sharing as to how this thing came around.
Yeah. So we basically lost our shirts there, and we didn't have shirts to lose at that stage, which is really scary. Like, but that, one of the people was saying, like, when's the next one? And there was, then I tell a story about a friend of ours that went to get us some dinner on the first evening of registration before it started. And they came back and said, I don't know what's going on here. Like, there's people literally dancing and jumping up and down in the streets. They're so excited about this. And like you said, it was like an early one when most people were getting a chance to see their heroes on YouTube and stuff like that. Some of these people, that's all they'd ever seen. And now they get to actually see them in person, get a chance to maybe even ask a question or whatever. They were incredibly excited.
Now, a fun fact we'll interject, which comes up in the film, is this is also when you and I meet.
Yes.
For the first time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and I'm like, boy, compared to other organizers, he's very stern and seems very intense and so forth. And I don't know all this backstory that you're sharing now, but I had no idea, and I don't think anybody else had any idea, all the things you're telling us now.
Yeah.
Which is, you still were very much an excellent showman for making everything happen, keeping everything in line. It was such a powerful quality event. And I'm confident that the reason people kept thinking, when's the next one, is because it still had to happen to the peak level of quality that you need to bring it to.
Yeah.
And you pulled it off. I never got to see it.
Yeah.
I never got to see that level of...
Most people have never... Most people, there's a few close friends that we've, and probably you much later down the road have heard some of it, you know. But most people have never heard it. And I don't know. I've had a couple of snarky comments and stuff about all the money that I make and all of that kind of stuff. And,
yeah.
and it was like,
because they just do the little back of the envelope.
Yeah,
they're just like, hey, he had this many participants. They made this much. My gosh, they're just hauling away cash.
You have no idea.
Yes.
And so,
can I interject one more thing?
Yeah.
Here's something that I discovered later with COSI that these hotels do that people don't appreciate, which is the food minimums.
Ugh.
Oh my God.
No.
We're talking tens of thousands of dollars that the hotel requires the conference organizer to use their cooks and their menu and so forth just to have the event.
100,000.
Yeah. Like,
and it's not 100,000. That was another thing, ignorance. Because we looked at these initial numbers that they gave us in the contract, because this contract says 60,000 plus for food, say, right? And I saw this plus at the end and thought, I don't know, maybe just the way they write it or something, you know. But it means plus service charge, 25%, plus sales tax on top of they charge a sales tax on top of the service charge that they've charged as well. So the 60,000 turns into 90,000 or something, right? Or 81 or something. It's huge. And so the F&B, and then there's a minimum room block as well. And you have to sell X number of nights in the hotel, and you are on the hook for all the rooms that you don't sell.
That's another source of stress. People have no idea.
And then we get to, so it's also a lot more money than we anticipated. And then the AV. So we've got in-house AV, they said, you know, and you get 20% discount or 15% discount or something on the in-house AV. So now we've signed the contract and we're busy organizing stuff, and we say, okay, let's talk to the AV guys. And we tell them what we want. It's a projector and a screen and a frickin' microphone. This did not include recording, right? This was just to display the slides and maybe sort of alternate between the speaker on the stage and the slides that were on the screen. That's all. How expensive can that be? Okay,
60, I have some idea now.
3 days, $60,000
yeah.
plus. It was at that point that I literally, everything else up till then I kept thinking, okay, I'll find a way. I'll find a way.
Had you already set the price per ticket by the time you were learning these?
Oh yes.
Right. So,
yeah. So we were ready, and we were charging, like in the beginning, half price to try and get some sales done, just to get some money in, right, to pay those first installments that we were going to. And I pinged Jeff, and I spoke to a couple of other people just to try and get an idea of what was a reasonable amount of money to ask for the tickets, and that was how I set it. But it was
so it's really worth taking a moment to actually talk about this math, because it just jumps to my head right away.
Right.
Let's say that you charged $100 a ticket and you're trying to get 1,000 people, right? That would get you to $10,000. Like that doesn't
even come close to cutting it.
Right.
No.
That doesn't. So, okay. So how do you get to that $100,000 minimum for just the food that they require you to get in order to have the conference?
Well, so what they say for that minimum is if you fail to meet that, because that's what they do. You could pay the room rental, or you can do the food and beverage, minimum that covers that rental, right? But now, because it's supposedly covering the rental, if you don't use it all, then you have to pay that. You have to pay that amount no matter what, even if you don't order that much food. So, and then we learned like just order the food, because like even if you're paying for it. But then the room block also is a huge one. In 2019, we had a massive crisis that it actually happened over 2 different events, but we missed those minimums on both.
Wasn't there a weather component or something like that?
Well, that added to the West Palm Beach, the Florida one. That added some to it, because we had added an extra day for the Latino community on the Monday, right? So everybody came in for the weekend, and then there was a few people, Latino people, that signed up that then paid for the extra day to come so they were staying. And then I had a few of the speakers that were staying. We had translation services organized and everything. So we had a few English speaking people that were getting their talks translated, and a few actual speakers that were going to speak in Spanish.
That's really cool.
But you see that what we didn't realize, because by now we've done 3 or 4 and we think we know what we're doing. But now this is a completely...
For everybody else, we're jumping ahead a little bit in time now. But yes, this is just bringing in...
So this was 2019.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right? So now we misread that demographic. And so we thought it's starting like 7:30 in the morning on Monday. And it was... it's Martin Luther King Day or something, so it was a holiday as well. But so people would come in on Sunday night. We had to register for an extra 100 room nights, and we were trying to get 100 people at least to the Latino Day, and in the end we did get almost exactly 100 people, but not. So there was 4 or 5 that stayed over, that were at the main event through the weekend. But the other 95 people, not one came and stayed in the hotel the night before.
Wow.
So there was 195 room. There was an extra 100 rooms. So we were 100 rooms on the hook.
And again, you just don't know.
No.
You just don't know.
But then the weather, you mentioned the weather. But so there was a massive storm. And there was a lot of people that had come for the main weekend for the conference that couldn't get out. And so they had extended their stay, and they were now staying in the hotel. And what happened was that they came down and they saw the dinners thing was still set up for all the people that were going to be there for the next day. And I told them there was going to be 50 people or something, the speakers and helpers and a few other people that were coming to the Latino Day that we knew about. And these guys all came down, and because the dinner was like free and gratis for the Friday and Saturday night, they thought, oh, there's still dinner. So they all went and sat down and helped themselves to dinner.
Oh.
And I wasn't even I didn't even realize that this was happening. But the chef came out of the and it was the servers were like they were running out of food. And the chef came out, and then by then I was in there, and there saw these guys standing like counting people. And so speak with the management the next day, and it was like, oh, you told us 50 people, it was even less. It was like 30 people or something. But there was like 100 that were eating dinner. So we got charged for 100 room nights and like, I don't know, 60 extra dinners or something like that for the people that they'd counted. The chef was running, and I do feel sorry for him. Like he was running to the back and trying to find food to be able to feed these people. And I didn't realize it was happening, so I couldn't prevent it from happening because I didn't know it was happening.
Literally just a big
Well,
misunderstanding.
it was just a cluster, and then, so that happened, and we got this huge bill, right? That was $30,000 or something over and above just penalties, right? So we paid that. But now all the money that we'd been collecting at that stage already for the one that was coming up in San Diego was now sucked up by this penalty in Florida. So then we get to San Diego, and we had, I think the year before, 2018 was the year that we had 650 people there. So we were expecting, we were excited. Like, we had grown so much over the last couple of years.
Just watching this trend.
Yes. And so
going.
So the salesperson at the hotel, with her little greediness, basically just built that growth into the contract. So now they were prepared to give us all of that space for this minimum amount that we had paid in 2018, right? So now they build for the same space. There's like double the F&B and double the room block. And Pam was against it, but I was so excited about the growth, and I was like, yeah, I signed the contract because I was counting on it continuing to grow the way it had 16, 17, 18, right?
So what they were saying is, we'll keep it to the same pricing structure, but we'll increase the volume because we...
No, it's the same. Well, but they were charged, so our minimums were now double.
Right. The minimums were now higher.
Right. But we knew that in retrospect, I know that they did not require that commitment in order to secure that space. They just screwed us. And so a bunch of things happened. There was a hurricane the year before that messed up either KetoCon or it was KetoCon and Keto Fest. And one of them
moved really close.
So they both moved into the beginning of July.
Right. Like the relevance here for people who don't know is, when you're organizing a conference, ideally, other conferences covering the same subject, especially if they have a lot of the same speakers, are ideally, they're not close
out a bit, right?
in time to yours, right?
Yeah. So now these guys used to be in like March and April. Now they're in the first 2 weeks, back-to-back weeks in July, and ours was like the fourth week in July. And so we literally had a bunch of vendors who go to all of these different events cancel on us. They had committed, but hadn't paid us the money yet. And so they canceled. And then a bunch of people, because they said, we've already been to 2 conferences this month. We can't do 3. And then, a bunch of the people, because there's some unique people that come to each of the different events, but there's also a big group of people that go to all the events. But 3 events in 1 month is just like too much for almost everybody. They financially, work-wise, they just can't do it. And we were the back end of the 3 events. And so we missed our minimums there. $60,000 in penalties.
Wow.
So $90,000 in total for the year for those two things.
Not in costs. In
not
penalties.
Penalties over and above the costs of the event. Correct.
Right.
Yeah. It was brutal, and
again, it just like nobody would have judged you if at the end of 2019 you said,
just walked away.
I'm done with this.
Yeah. And I honestly don't know why. I think
it's the same thing that got you started.
I think it's because all we need is one person to come to us and think, God, you saved my life.
Yeah.
Or you saved my husband's life or something.
Nobody knows until they've experienced that.
That's priceless, you know?
It is. And it's really, I think especially when we draw on our own experience, our own stories that we've already shared. There's this sort of like sense of ultra selfishness if I just keep this to myself. Like, I have other family members that really could use this, but I mean, why stop there?
Yeah.
Why not at least? I think the tough part is that we don't even want to impose this line of thinking so much as we just want people to know it's an option, because we didn't have that option.
Yes.
We didn't know.
That's my whole point. Like, how did I not know at 52 about this?
Right.
And so you feel obliged to try and further that message.
Yeah, there's decades of time where I was getting a singular message, where if I was gaining weight, it's because I just wasn't moving enough and I was eating too much. And I just needed to just push it a bit harder. So you're right, and it's been fuel for me on my end, where somebody writing to me, somebody approaching me at a conference, I mean, I could have 10 things go wrong in a day, and then somebody comes forward with their heartfelt story or how it's helped their family, and I'm just like, got to keep going.
Yeah, and again, I don't believe I ever consciously thought that, oh, wow, okay, now I need to keep going. When I don't remember ever thinking, I need to stop doing this. It was literally, what do I do? How do I fix this? How do we keep going? I don't remember ever anyway, feeling like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I don't know, maybe there's been two or three people out of however many 100,000 people we've helped influence or whatever that have made some comment to me about doing this for the money and stuff like that. And maybe in that moment I've just thought, you know, if that's what you think, I'm not.
I'd like to imagine not having to deal with this comment ever coming my way again when they just don't know.
Yeah. But really, it's literally a couple, and you're very familiar with one of them because that was done very publicly. But yeah, what again? Even if I did momentarily think that because of what Vinny said, the way that the community came to my aid and to my rescue and literally lambasted him for saying what he said.
And
that
to Vinny's defense, he did reconcile. He had you on.
Agreed.
Yeah.
In his defense, he. But everybody from Brian Lenskes, you, just he literally had to take his phone off the hook. You know what I mean? Like, people were flooding in to yell at him about it.
Well, obviously we've covered a lot here already, but. And I say this with love in my heart, anybody who chastises conference organizers should get deeper into these numbers and get a sense, because there's this other thing that's very difficult to quantify or convey, which is the day-to-day stress of these uncertainties. How much including even just how many people are going to come, period.
You don't know.
That's the bottom line. You really, really don't know. So I was chatting with you about this when I was thinking about doing our conference, but everybody was telling me the same thing. You have basically two big spikes, which is when you're first opening the doors to registration, you have like one big spike then.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like this with some occasional bumps depending on promotion. And then the last spike is in the week or two before.
Sometimes.
And you just don't know what that'll look like.
You can't count on it.
Right.
Like, 1 year, like in the last 3 weeks, I'd sell like 2 tickets, and like in San Diego last year, we sold, I can't remember, maybe 60, 70 tickets in the last 2 weeks, like out of nowhere. I don't think I didn't do anything different.
Right.
Pam and I look at each other and think, what the hell did we do wrong or better between the two?
I think it's just
coming to Boca now, this one a couple of months ago, kind of expecting the same thing that happened, maybe renewed interests or something, I don't know. Again, sold a handful of tickets in the last 2 weeks. So all of that, like we were kind of counting on that the increased revenue from those last couple of weeks, and it never happened. But the year before, Boca the year before, we did have a big surge in the last 2 weeks. So I don't know. It's that hit and miss, and that constant worry and stress is telling.
It is. It's so intensive, and I'll share with you some. I think this may be the first time I'm sharing this publicly. We almost didn't do the second COSI.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the first conference last year, COSI 2024, and as you know, it's a genuine charity event
Mm-hmm.
dressed up as a conference, which is already kind of like a massive ask to say we're going to plan to make money and then give it all away.
Right.
But even the we're going to plan to make money, you're kind of now on the hook to show something,
Yeah.
when in reality, exactly what you said, a lot of times conferences break even. A lot of times they're really just a money loser for whoever puts it up.
We've put a ton of money over the years into keeping afloat.
And this is why Silverton was the first place we did the conference, and it was attached to a hotel. But given a number of factors I won't go into, I'll just say we wanted to shop for a new one. We found lots of beautiful places, but they had these food minimums, the hotel blocks, same thing. And I kept thinking, look, if at the end of the day we're trying to raise money for a charity, I can't raise less money if I got more people. That would feel like failure to me, because then basically what am I doing is I'm turning around to the participants or the attendees and saying, okay, sorry, we didn't raise as much money because we had to give more to the hotel for their, And so for a while, we weren't even sure if we were going to do it again. And then UNLV ended up being a great option at a cost. The cost was that, as you may have noticed, it's a little more of a pain in the butt to register. We had to go through their system. So people had to do kind of a 2-step registration, go to tickets.com and then go to another. And it is a loss of convenience.
Although we didn't really know that because we came as vendors there,
That's true. You didn't have to deal with it.
We didn't have to deal with that. But still.
But yeah, the not having a hotel attached is kind of a lack of convenience. So you're putting it on people to travel to and from their hotel.
Right, they're going to find their own hotel and get an Uber to the event and all of that.
Yeah.
But I think it wouldn't work for me.
Well, no, your model's diametrically the opposite.
But that's the point. Is for you, people know what you do and what you're trying to do here. Like, I'm trying to put an event on to teach people. Like, you're putting on this event to try and raise some money to carry on with the research that you're doing, and people know that. And so the people that come are the people that want to support you. And so if they have to, and I think maybe a few of that didn't come to the last one or whatever might not have realized, but you can see that you're doing this as economically as possible so that you can earn as much money as possible to put towards your research. And like I said, people get it. And you saw, I mean, they bought into the extra lunch prep things that you did, and all the ways that you introduced it to try and raise a bit more money. People responded,
Right.
and they responded because they want to help you, and that says a lot, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but I actually like how the way each of us does our conference. I feel like they focus in different areas.
Yeah.
And they complement each other well. So, for example, I like how we do ours in that it's very back to back. We're very rapid fire. We get in a lot of talks, but it comes in expense. The expense is there's less Q&A for a given talk. A lot of times people have things they want to ask.
And they don't get a chance, yeah.
And they don't get that chance. And you give a nice chunk of time for your speakers to really stretch their legs, get through everything, right? I've had, and I'll just state up front, I've had speakers who've come. Adrian Sotomoda, did you watch his talk from this last conference?
At your
my conference, yeah.
I didn't see his. No, I was out at my table.
So he understandably kind of complained, and they was kind of like, Dave asked me to speak on Mendelian randomization, but just so you know, this is a third semester in a master's level, blah, blah, blah. And he's only given me 28 minutes to say this, right? But at your conference, an Adrian Sotomoda would get a solid 45 minutes with 30 minutes of Q&A. You'd get the full experience.
I hope I'm getting him back. He was in San Diego last year.
I'll twist his arm.
I haven't approached him yet, but he is just.
He's amazing.
On all levels. I mean, as a scientist, you don't get much better. As a speaker, you don't get much better, and as a person, you certainly don't get much better. He's got it covered on all angles, you know, and I just love him. Melanie Tidman is creating our research academy. You know, we get this new journal in the SMHP now, and so she's created a research academy to teach people how to do studies within their practices and stuff like that, so that they can write a paper to put in, to submit to the journal. And she approached Adrian while he was in San Diego, and he's fully on board. Like, he's excited about, I think, the next journal club that we're doing in a couple of months' time. He's actually going to be on there teaching people how to do stuff. He's going to be a mentor in the program for people, and you know, I mean, and he must be relatively busy person.
Yes.
And
I know I'm a co-author with him on all these papers,
and yet he's happy to do it. And he's amazing.
You know, it's another thing we should chat about, that me coming late to the game of conference organizing, I was not looking forward to having to deal with, which is scarcity. You only have so many speaker slots.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trade-off, right? So I think I speak for all of us who organize conferences. We'd love if everybody could come and speak at our conference. Like every single person who ever had something important to say that we would love to hear, we'd like to do it. But there's no getting around it. You have to do some degree of horse trading, and it's tough.
It's hard, it is.
It's
making that decision of who you're going to leave out and who you're going to include.
Yeah, because the longer you're doing this, the more the pool grows, right?
Yes, and more people are becoming proficient and becoming potential speakers, you know. And I try, at every conference, I try to have at least a couple of new people. Give a couple of people a chance. But you can't have all of them like that, because then no one's going to come, because nobody knows them. People will go to the other conference who've got these high profile speakers. So you got to kind of balance it.
Yeah,
and find the right balance, you know.
That's the other component, that a lot of a lot of criticism, which I kind of understand to an extent, comes from saying, wait, this is yet another conference that features XYZ A-lister speaker. To which, as a conference organizer, you'd say, well, I'm sorry, we do have to have some superstars.
Otherwise, no one comes.
Yeah, you can't get everyone to take a risk on an entirely new slate of speakers.
Right.
And so, yes, you're doing exactly what we're doing with COSI, which is to say, we're trying to cover both ends.
Mm.
Of course, there are, I mean, I don't want to sound like a total Taub stan, but any conference where I can see him talk, I'm going to listen to him talk. He's just a great storyteller.
Yeah.
He could be talking about something that I already heard another presentation, but he has a way of how he weaves it together, puts it together. So I totally understand why so many people are drawn to coming to your conference, given how often you feature Taubes.
Gary has been, I think he came and spoke in Seattle as well, but he's been at every single San Diego one. But he is, he's the reason we're here. And, you know, I tell that story sometimes. I tell it like when I introduce him on the stage, or a shortened version of it. But he was one of the 4 people that I wrote to that morning after my birthday. And I literally wrote to his contact me thing or contact us on his website. And he came back to me. He responded and went backwards and forwards. He has a fee for speaking, and I was aware of that. And so going backwards and forwards with him, he was like trying to find out what I was about. I mean, I hadn't been to a con. Nobody had met me. Nobody knew who I was. So eventually he agreed to have a meeting with me on the phone. And we spoke for an hour. And like, I was really aware of how much he values his time, right? And Pam was sort of down the side here on the corridor, and I was on speakerphone. And he literally grilled me. I tease him and say, like, it was like I'd asked to marry your daughter, you know. And he said to me after, he said, yeah, Doug, like, you know, I've been invited to go and speak somewhere, and it's like a handful of people show up. And it's, they still paid his fee, but he said it's bad optics. It's not, you know, it's like news like that gets out. Like, oh, there was 5 people at Gary's talk, you know,
which is less about him, it's more about the organizer.
Yeah, but it's not. It's got. But people will try to, especially the naysayers and the detractors, right? They're going to try, like, oh, look at this, like, He just said, I just wanted to try to understand whether I felt like you could do this. So he said, so, yeah.
And to be sure, this is another thing a lot of people don't realize. A lot of A-lister speakers, not even just low carbers, just period, often have, because what often happens is that they don't really make their money from like their books or from articles they write or something like that. It's usually they're traveling around and
getting paid to
share the story,
right? Yeah.
and to share the data and so forth. And again, to be fair to them, if they are a draw, the conference benefits from their name equity to bring people on board.
Absolutely. And so that, you know, so he literally said to me, so yeah, if you do this, I'll come and speak. And I said, okay, bargain, thanks, you know. Put down the phone, and I looked at Pam and I said, shit, like, this is real, like, this is happening, you know. And that was a moment when we realized that we were going to put this on. And we at least had the support of Gary Taubes, you know. And he's been a massive supporter of us all the way through. He was a big part of putting me in contact with Adele Height, and eventually the 2 of us eventually put a panel of advisors together and developed the clinical guidelines that we first published on Low Carb USA, and then migrated over to the SMHP once we created that nonprofit. He's an integral part of all of that. And literally, if it hadn't been for that conversation we'd had with him on the phone, I quite possibly wouldn't have. That was the point that gave me the courage to then move ahead and say, okay, let's do this. Yeah, he won't take credit for it, but that had a lot to do with him.
Let's get into that. Your conference originally was named Low Carb USA.
Yes.
But ultimately you changed its name. And I'm wondering, did you change its name before the organization was coming together, or was it vice versa?
Before the SMHP came,
yeah.
And I was after that. It was basically once it was established.
So tell us about the SMHP.
So basically, some of the board members were saying, like, we should do a conference. And my heart sank. It was like, no, not another conference. Like, we already, like, what are you talking about?
But wait, rewind. Where's the board? Where'd the board?
So the board of directors of the SMHP, right? Pam and I are Low Carb USA.
Right.
Right. And it's
a separate entity you didn't found.
Correct. No, I found both of them.
Oh, you found both of them.
Yeah. So the Low Carb USA, we started, and we still run it, and really what it's become, it was going to be, it had the clinical guidelines and a bunch of other training and all of that. But once the SMHP became a thing, like, a lot of that's migrated over there, and Low Carb USA effectively puts on conferences. That's its function. And it's a for-profit organization, but it doesn't ever make any money. But then Tro was the big person behind establishing the SMHP. He was jabbering to Pam apparently at Boca in 2020 before the pandemic hit, saying, like, we need to have an organization that represents all of us practitioners, and Doug needs to do it, start it or whatever. But I didn't know this conversation even happened. And he started talking about it, like putting it out there on Twitter. And I contacted him and said, like, we've already got this concept of a professional organization within Low Carb USA. We've got the clinical guidelines, but it's not really taking off. We've got like 30 members, so yeah, let's talk about what we need to do differently to get some traction. And we kind of agreed that it had to have a separate non-profit that specifically was an organization that represented all the practitioners who want to embrace this intervention in their practices. And then COVID hit. And so the whole way through that 2020, I basically learned how to create and establish a nonprofit, which I had no idea about before. And then...
So like a lot of people, as COVID hits, and now there's a lot you can't do, just because quite literally we're locked down everywhere. You took that time to then become a bit more informed on how to do this.
Right. So I think, well, yes, because we had decided to do a virtual version of the San Diego event because that hotel had shut down and everything. Obviously, we couldn't get in there. So I was learning how to do how to run a virtual conference. So I was buying all the equipment and building a studio in the house. But at the same time, in parallel, I was because it's just, we didn't have any money, so we couldn't pay somebody. We couldn't pay a lawyer to establish a non-profit organization for us. I had to do it myself, and yeah, it's a lot more effort than people realize. But and it was COVID, so now you try and apply to some government organization for something along the way, and there's no one at work. And then slowly they started to established and actually be working from home as well. And it was slow, but it actually moved. We made progress. And the nonprofit got approved towards the end of the year. And
that is not a small feat, I can tell you.
And, in the middle of December, we launched the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. And had, again, one of these things I've done so many things that in my life, tried businesses and projects and stuff that just abject failures. And so with this, it was going to be another one of those things. Like I always put so much effort and so much money and so much time into building, but I want it to be perfect, right? Because I'm like that. And then it's a failure. But by then I've got no more energy, no more money or anything to try to fix it, to make it work. And so it just fizzles out. So this time we just literally just built it and bare bones. And just started, and it was Low Carb USA as well. I think that having done that with Low Carb USA, I kind of realized that this is what I've learned from all those previous years and failures, was that just do it, put it out there and see how people respond, and then use your energy that you still have and the money that you still have to try and make it better. So to make it what people really do want, and not what you think is a good idea. And for me, because all my ideas seem to suck. It's like I think it's a great idea, and then you put it out there, and it's like, nah, nobody else thinks it's a great idea. But this is what they want, and now I've got the energy to go after that and actually put that in place and make it happen. And so,
so now the Low Carb USA as a name for the event has changed.
Yeah. So now we established the SMHP. Now the board starts talking about. Maybe we want to have, we need to have an annual meeting. And I said, no, we don't need to have another annual meeting. And so at that point, I was starting to say, okay, let's try and make one or all of our Low Carb USA events actually be an SMHP event. And so we changed it to Symposium of Metabolic Health. So it used to be Low Carb USA San Diego and Low Carb USA Boca or West Palm Beach or whatever the other ones were, Seattle. But then, where was I going with this?
Renaming, but Symposium.
Yeah, so we go with the Symposium of Metabolic Health now, San Diego. And the Symposium of Metabolic Health, that was more kind of associated or could be associated with the SMHP. But if you see, it still says on the website, if you look at it, it says Symposium of Metabolic Health San Diego, an SMHP event hosted by Low Carb USA. So the idea is that Low Carb USA actually has the infrastructure to put on an event. So theoretically, the SMHP hires us as Low Carb USA to put on the event.
Technically, I just always still call it Low Carb USA. It's so hard for me to switch it back.
And that's fine. One day we may, because everything's so. And I've done opening talks at numerous events, kind of with images on the slides, like of me of a character with different hats on, like literally saying, like, this is me in the SMHP hat, and this is me with the Low Carb USA hat, and this is what the two different organizations. And people still don't, okay, even maybe the people in that room might get it. But no one else, very few other people get to see the videos afterwards, really. And so nobody else hears that explanation. And so many people think SMHP and Low Carb USA is the same thing. And so I'm starting to get to the point now where I'm sort of saying it's like two different departments in the same company. Like,
Right. It's a good way of putting it.
So in any big company, you don't have the same people doing all the jobs, right? You have different departments. And so Low Carb USA is really just a department of it's not really another department of the SMHP, but it's of this bigger thing that is that has this overall mission of getting this message out. But in the end, if people want it, I've stopped trying to explain it to people. It's
Right.
like, it's just it's not worth the trouble. And in the end, we're the same people doing it. We just
Just go to the place where it's at.
But we are growing, and we're starting to get more people to help us do stuff, and so these departments are kind of developing. And one day, but we have a huge separate and distinct following in Low Carb USA as we do in the SMHP. There's a bit of crossover, but there's a bunch of people. I mean, we got, I don't know, 14,000 people or something on our mailing list, and only a few thousand on the SMHP, and it's growing all the time. But there's a lot of people that follow Low Carb USA that maybe don't even know what the SMHP is. I don't know.
So not to segue entirely too far away, talking about COSI, you got to be there for our special screening for the movie. I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about it yet.
Wow.
What did you think about the movie?
Unbelievable. I mean, I kind of already knew ahead of time how amazing the announcement of the results was, and what that really meant, and how good that was going to be. But I kind of already knew that. That was, as a guy that's doing the trials and all of that, you can't say that, but I can. But the most powerful, Jen and Jen especially, I think, but her and Tom did such a good job of capturing those stories. I don't know how much it's like the book, you don't want to give it all away, but a couple of those stories just the one girl gets better, and then LDL's bad, so they start trying to fix that, and she starts getting sick again, mental health issues, and like, I don't care if I die of a heart attack, but I'm not going back and losing my children again. All that, I mean, it's the way she captured that, and I think especially that moment when she started to realize the symptoms were coming back, and how devastating that was. To me, was just so powerful, and she did such a good job. It's amazing.
It really is
so powerful.
It's something that only if you've seen it do you know what I mean when I say this. While it definitely delves into our study, I'm so thankful that we made the conscious choice to go for people who are using keto for their own medical reasons, and just hearing their stories straight from their mouth. I don't want to say anymore because people need to watch the movie. You need to watch the movie. So we're talking about I'm trying to get involved in being one of the people that does a private screening. I know some people.
You're gonna do a few of those before it goes to actual streaming, right?
Yeah.
Any chance you have a timeline on that? Because people are asking, man.
Yeah. So there's a there's I'll just say there's kind of a 2-phase thing. Phase 1 is getting the distribution settled. Part of settling the distribution with like a major streamer is what we're allowed to do. Because some distribution deal theoretically might be, well, you can't screen anything anymore. You already did one. We don't want it to get out.
Uh-huh.
That's probably not. That's unlikely to be the final arranged deal. More likely, they will allow for some satellite events, which is what we'd intended to do in the first place. With the release, probably sometime in the fall, maybe September, maybe October, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite clear yet, but yes, I have. I've stated up front that I have certain. Let's just say, friends I want to, show my appreciation for, that I think have been so instrumental. Of course, many people may not know this, even if they followed me for a long time. But you and I have kind of had a special relationship with regard to, a little bit by coincidence, I've had major moments of this study that actually tie into the Low Carb USA conference.
Yeah.
Including the announcement.
Luckily, the timing just worked out.
Yeah. And it's been great because I want to say 3 of the last 4 times I've spoke at your conference, I've had something to drop. So much so that now it's like everybody
is expecting it.
Yeah. It's almost like there's greater excitement when I can't say what it is that my talk's going to be. But by the same token, I kind of feel like if I can, I'd love to tie in a screening at your conference. The irony is I can't speak enough to the details until I know what the distribution agreement is. It may be, for example, that it's a limited showing, like we can only show like so many people at a given conference. That might be a part of it.
Yeah, so, but and then we could just add a thing in there and let people sign up. And if we allowed 100 people, and just say like, dude, you better get on it because there's like 100 spots. So
if it's anything like our special screening, which literally had to have a number of people change their flights, just because originally the COSI conference itself takes place over Saturday and Sunday,
yeah.
And the day was added on Friday, the Friday before, yet that list filled up right away. I barely announced it, and we had a capacity of 200. So, yes, I'm not sure when this will go out, and I'm not sure if the distribution deal will be done yet. But, if I can,
but then if it doesn't, or if it can't, in time anyway, there's a guy that we used to do the local San Diego meetings with when we still lived there. And I've spoken with him about maybe doing, a local screening in San Diego. And he can organize it. And maybe Pam and I can get on depending on when it is.
Yeah.
We might be able to get on a plane and go over there and help him, but at least help coordinate one screening in San Diego if one at the event can't work.
Now that you've seen it, you know why we're so ecstatic about it.
Oh.
Because it's just...
And I give a lot of credit to Jen for that.
100%.
She's...
The
content's the content, but how you actually frame it turns it into a brilliant movie, and that's what she's done.
Well, and it's not just having the stories; it's having incredible cinematography, incredible sound design. One of the things that I was impressed by, and I just keep thinking about it every time I think back to all of the work we did, is they might get a space where there was going to be, say, 2 or 3 interviews, and they would do a setup for every single interview. So there was never, you'll watch it, there's not one time where there's a reuse. Even if guests were like back to back, they would say, no, we want another 30 minutes or an hour to go with this angle, with this, and the light coming this direction, so forth.
Yeah.
They were just top notch.
That's all Tom, right?
Professionals.
That's all his side. And then, telling the story and capturing it the way that's all Jen. That's all Jen.
She's a phenomenal writer.
Oh, she's just amazing.
And what I like is while the study and the important topic of cholesterol going up when you go ketogenic, especially when you're metabolically healthy, is the through line. It's almost like a gateway drug to all of these other important details that are being missed. There's all these people who, and as I say at the very beginning in the story, it's not that it's a panacea. It's not that keto is for everyone.
Mm-mm.
And we're not trying to, getting back to what we were talking about before, it's not whether or not we want to push a particular thing you need to do. It's whether or not you would even know that it's available.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we want anybody and everybody who could see some benefit
to have that choice,
to at least know, right, to know about it and then be able to decide for themselves.
Yes. And that's exactly how I finish off this book. And I was saying, okay, thanks. If you got to this point right at the end, then obviously something resonated with you, And I said, basically, whether you're someone who just wants to improve your health, whether you're a practitioner that's sick of not being able to help people, this is something that you need to consider. And patient autonomy is key, right? Your doctor should lay out all the options for you without any bias, with all the information, and you get to make the choice of which form of treatment you want to which path you want to follow. And it's your choice. That's what I kind of try to finish off with, is like, it's your choice. The doctor actually doesn't have the say. It's your choice. And when everybody gets that, then we don't have a job anymore. But that's not going to happen. So,
well, I like that we got to fit in a line that I say often. Jen helped me tailor it into the narration toward the end, where I say, because I believe this, no one can take ownership of your health like you can.
Yes.
It might seem like an obvious statement to make, but
it's not obvious, because people think that the doctor is in control and that the doctor is the ultimate authority,
or that the food is in control and they're just kind of stuck with the circumstances that they're in, or
right,
or the the family that they're in, or that they're so. I think too often, and I was one of them, we feel like we're a passenger and the environment around us it's too strong.
Yeah.
It's too much, and our own biology is fighting against us, and so it exhausts us to even consider it. And then we see somebody who seems to be doing well, and we think, well, that person's a health nut. They're devoting way more time, way more effort than I could put into this. And now I just feel this frustration. We have a number of people like Dr. Tro, who you and I came from a comparable place in that we were not that bad.
We weren't, yes.
But then you meet some folks who were in terrible shape, who've done every kind of diet, like lived a lifetime of failure after failure, and they often tend to be the strongest pushers and the most frustrated. And I get it, because they had been getting a lifetime of advice and a lifetime of shame, like getting shamed by others. And then all of a sudden, the one thing that was never put on the table for you. It's just, anyway,
Yeah.
It's a journey, but I think this is where I do love the conferences. I feel like the conferences are a way to bring people together. You don't just get to see the speakers, you get to interact with them.
And you get to hang out with all these other like-minded folks.
Exactly. You get to connect with other people. There's
People make lifelong friendships at that conference. It's amazing. There's a couple of people that literally come back each year, and they live on other sides of the country, but they're literally in contact every day, and meet up in San Diego once a year to connect up again and hang out. And they met at like the first San Diego conference, and they've been back to every one since then. Amazing people.
I like it because as I get older, I'm less likely to leave the house.
Yeah.
So it's nice when there's these sort of almost mini reunions of sorts that give us a reason to come together all at the same time. And that's where conferences are great. I used to care a lot more about speaking at them. And it's true, it has a lot to do with whether I'll go, given whether it's a responsibility. But I think I now appreciate more than ever just being able to connect with other humans in a place where you have so many things in common with how you're approaching life and diet.
And I do believe that it often makes people better people. And we did Brian Lenskes came to our conference in 2017 or something. It was the first time. He was just down the road from his practice, and it was CMEs. So he thought he'd come and take a look, and he'd been doing it on the sly himself, but fasting through Jason Fung, and lost a bunch of weight, and people were asking him what he was doing, and he wouldn't tell them. He just said, I'm just trying another diet or something. Because he was afraid. And then he came to our conference and saw all of these other scientists and doctors talking about it, and sat with dinner with Gary Taubes, I think even, and just by the end of the weekend, he was sold, and then he started telling his patients about it. When he spoke to me, he reached out to me about 5-6 months later, and said, I hadn't even met him at the conference. I didn't know who he was. And he said, can we meet? And we ended up meeting, and he said, in the last, in my 20 plus years of practice, I've never had one patient come off insulin. They've always just increased over time. And he said, in the last 5 months, I've had 11 patients come off insulin.
Wow.
And he says, and I didn't take them off insulin. They were asking questions, and if they asked, he would say, okay, well, I'm going to tell you this. And if you decide you want to do that, I'll help you. But I'm not telling you, I'm not prescribing this for you, right? And he said, I didn't take them off insulin. They took themselves off insulin by changing their lifestyle. 11 patients in 5 months when he had none in 20 years before that. And he was so inspired, his was in his practice. Us was just in our personal experience. It's you get driven to try and tell other people about what you didn't know. And so he put on a conference at his church, and it was over 6 weeks, okay, and he had it on a Sunday. But then a lot of it's a big church, and a lot of practitioners, the people came to him and said, hey, we still want to go to church. And so he put it on, he repeated the thing on a Monday night. So he did, and 6 times. Sunday, repeated it Monday. And he had 200 people show up, and they showed up all 6 weeks.
Wow.
And they started doing it through the 6 weeks. And we didn't have anything to do with it, right? He didn't ask me for help. He planned it all himself. He did everything. And we just, Pam, like I often say, like we stood at the back of the room like this, like proud parents. It was amazing. On the very last day, he, it's like this big auditorium type church hall, and there's a stage at the bottom, and so he had a panel of like 5 different people himself, and he asked me to come and be on that panel. And that was the last day, the last Monday night. And people were asking questions, and the security guys started roaming around like it's time to leave kind of thing. And so we said, okay, we're going to call it to an end. But like the minute we stopped it, like people just came down out of the pews, off the bleachers. And we ended up sitting literally along the edge of the stage, the legs hanging over the stage, and all these people like gathered around each of us in different groups. And Pam was sitting next to me, and like there was literally people coming up and like tapping me on the shoulder and saying, I need to thank you for making my husband a better person. Not just one, a lot. And people talking about how they never used to eat eggs, and now they eat 6 a day, and this person's lost this much weight, and so many people kept talking about how much easier they were to live with, or nicer people, or whatever. That was when I realized that this community somehow eating butter and fat and stuff like that somehow makes you a nicer person. I don't know what it is. Pam even said that when we had first West Palm Beach event, we came back the second time, and we had a meeting ahead of time it was the same lady that had been in charge of our event the previous year. And she said, after any event, like we have a debrief, like all the heads of all the different departments, front desk, back of house, cleaning, the restaurant, chef, everybody. And she said, after that event, every one of them, without fail, said that this is the best group they've ever had in the hotel.
Wow.
And those back of house people, they like the admin people change out, right? Those guys work there for 50 years. Like that's the same people. And then their sons or daughters probably end up taking over their job, So they've seen a lot of people come and go in a lot of conferences. And that was where Pam came up with that thing. It was like, I forget exactly, but it was something about eating meat and butter or something makes people nicer for some reason, or something like that. I don't know. It's a big generalization, but I really feel like we're talking about mental health and how much it helps with mental health and cognitive function and all of these things, anxiety, all of those things. If that stuff all goes away, in the end, it makes you more relaxed. And maybe that, in its way, is why people seem to be nicer. I don't know.
I mean, certainly I know nice people on high carb diets. I know grumpier people on low carb diets. But I will say this, for me personally, and I've discussed this many times. As you know, I've done a lot of these N of 1 experiments.
Yeah, 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah, 1 or 2. And some of them were carb reintroduction, carb swap experiments. And I would say the majority of them, there wasn't too much of a detectable impact, but a few of them there was. For example, when I did the white bread and processed meat experiment, everyone in my life, everybody, Siobhan, Sharon, they were saying, you're clearly more irritable. I don't know if you realize it, and I myself couldn't fully realize it, but there's this one moment I still remember very vividly to this day, which was I was doing a morning walk and I was just like frustrated about a number of things. And I kept thinking, man, I really am feeling this like intense, explosive frustration. But it could be related to like these certain emails and so forth. And as I was coming up at the end of a block, I want to say maybe 20 feet ahead of me, a car turns a little bit rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not even on the street. I'm 20 feet from the crosswalk. But I found myself just getting frustrated, like, whoa, that was fast. The me of today would not even, that thought wouldn't have even crossed my mind. But I had this like immediate reflection, like, wow, I really am. They're right. I really am just taking things almost a little more personally in ways that are completely illogical. I'm so far away from a car hitting me or anything like that. But I was telling Siobhan about that later, and she was like, yeah, with all due respect, if you do another one of these experiments, because we work together, she's like, I want to take that time off to let you do it, right?
Yeah.
Again, I want to 100% say this is very individualized, but I do have some friends who are low carb because they say they're steadier.
Yeah.
For them, they are more irritable when they're on a higher carb diet. And some degree of that could be insulin resistance. A lot of it could come back to brain health, and it may just be very individual to them. But I know for me, sometimes it was literally induced by these experiments. I did this also happened to me with the add sugar 2 experiment, and also happened to me on the weight gain experiment, although weight gaining itself can be its own confounder,
Correct,
to be fair.
Yeah. No, totally. I believe that. I don't even know. I would never in a million years agree to do something like that. It's just, I don't know how you did it.
Got some great numbers, some great data. It was fantastic.
I'd rather get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
I know.
And spoiler alert, the weight that I started with when I began that experiment, I did not get back to after it. So I think I started in an average of 178 pounds, I want to say at that time. And now my nadir, my lowest amount that I'll get to typically when I'm being like extra good keto is still like in the 180s. So
yeah, but that being said, are you taking into account the muscle mass? Because you've been working out with Dr. Ben, right?
Oh yeah, but that was much later on the weight gain experiment.
All right, but you're just saying like now you're not getting back to that.
Correct.
Weight.
Correct. I do have now I am a higher baseline weight, and I am confident it does have to do with the muscle mass. Let's extol Dr. Ben for a second,
yeah.
Right? So for
He's
real,
best.
Again, I got to give credit to you. You have these rounds, which you do. It's on Saturdays. How many do you do a year, roughly?
Yes.
Well, no. But what's the average
That's
that
what
you
I
probably
mean.
do?
It's supposed to be once a month,
Right.
but new websites and all sorts of stuff got in the way, and so it's gone times when it's been 3 or 4 months before we've had one. So in the first year or two, we did like literally every month.
So just
religiously. But it's supposed to be once a month, but whenever we can. That's
so what it is for people who don't know. This is it's effectively a presentation by a single speaker, typically somebody you already knew, and often is somebody who has also presented at your conferences.
Maybe.
I've done a few, I think.
You've done a couple, yeah.
And it's online. It's like a Zoom call. It's typically on a Saturday, and a bunch of people join. And it's great because for those of us who are speakers, we do our presentation, we're sharing it, we're going through it, and then just like with your conferences, there's a decent Q&A.
Yeah, but here it's much longer Q&A.
Yeah.
And I'm not the mic Nazi. So I'm not like wrestling the mic out of people's hands and stuff, and it goes on. I mean, Amy
Berger's conversations.
Amy Berger's, yeah, that's the thing. The conversations that develop afterwards are amazing. Amy Berger's talk was less than an hour, and the overall recording is over 3 hours.
Yeah, I believe it.
But just these incredible conversations that that develop, you know.
And so, Dr. Ben Bukikio, right? I'm saying
Bukikio,
correct.
yes, correct.
Bukikio. I don't know what his age is, but I know that he's
He must be close to 80, because
yeah.
he was. I'm pretty sure he was 70, like right in the beginning, in the first couple of years when I met him. So he
And he is unlike anybody you're going to meet at that age, because he is buff
yeah.
and he's whip smart. I mean, we've had so many great conversations about biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And he not only gave a talk that lingered with me, but it got my head moving. I didn't end up adopting it right away until I went to a conference. But basically what he was discussing was how you really don't need to, like, if you're somebody who's trying to work with time management, that's me. You're trying to avoid injury, that's me. Those are literally my two biggest issues. Then you actually can do exercise to failure in literally 15 to 20 minutes and twice a week. Like, that's enough for maintenance, and you might even grow in strength from that, right? And I'm hearing it sounds like your 8-minute abs conversation. I'm like, okay. Well, I go to one of your conferences where he's got the full body machine set up.
Mm-hmm.
Takes me through one of these sessions that's super short, and I am wiped out. I am just completely tanked. And he offered up, to my great appreciation, he said, I'll train you. Just let me know. And so I started pulling him up on Zoom on an iPad, started doing the full body training, got one of these machines. It's upstairs right now in the loft. And that was, a year and maybe 8 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still doing it to this day. I have missed some, but usually I stick to at least 1 or 2 a week. And I've gotten stronger than I ever have in my life. Now, I have to emphasize, I'm not like you or most other people who have exercise. Like, I'm not somebody who gravitates towards athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
I have had periods of time where I was training and running like half marathons, but I would only do just enough to do that. I almost never got into strength training. It was just always very boring to me. And I'm typical for a lot of software engineers. You've worked with a lot of software engineers.
Yeah.
We're not exactly known for hitting the gym.
No, I was an exception. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that said, I found I could really genuinely get into this. I always had this one thing that I could always think that would get me there, which is, you know what, no matter what's going on and no matter how much you want to push this off, if you head in there at 8 a.m., you're back out by 8:15. So just do what needs to happen. And then 15 minutes later, you're going to feel great that you did it. You're going to feel great the rest of, the week coming up until Saturday, until you have to do it again. And then, but that's it. The total amount of time used and the whole production of going to a gym and so forth, I get it. If you're into it, it's great. And a lot of people are.
Yeah, but it's Arthur Jones is the inventor of the Nautilus machines, which is considered some of the top of the range, and he's like one of the godfathers of high intensity exercise. And one of his statements was that it took him 20 years to realize that 2 sets was better than 4. And another 20 years to realize that 1 set was better than 2. And, Ben worked with him and, was great friends with him and learned a lot from him of what he teaches as well. And I don't know what it is about. Well, what I was thinking to try and tell you was, you started talking about 15 minutes and you're out of there. I have to admit that for me it's half an hour, because, like you said, when I'm finished, I finished the exercise within 15 minutes, but I am wiped out.
Right.
So I literally lie on the bench, like I'm breathing hard, I'm dead.
Yeah.
And so I could get up and try and walk somewhere, but I'm literally breathing really, really hard. But I lie back on the bench, and I've normally got some music on, and it just keeps playing. But you can literally set your clock to it. That it takes me 15 minutes to normalize. And I don't have a watch or anything on me. I'm just lying there, and I feel like I'm recovered, and I get up and go back to my desk, and I look. The clock's outside in the lounge, and so I walk out of the room that we've got set up as a gym, and I walk out there and I look at the clock, and I know when I went in it was almost to the minute, like half an hour. So I recover. It's amazing. Like in that 15 minutes, I'm completely back to normal.
I usually just don't have the time. I just have noodle arms and legs as I'm getting back to my computer and like, ow, 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 ow. But no, I'm now up to, and again, without trying, I'm up to a 40-pound vest that I now wear.
Yeah.
So it's just packed with sand, heavy as F. I do the wall seat. I'm just like dying.
Mm-hmm.
Then I get on the machines, but it's because I maxed out not all of them, but a lot of the different panels. So I had to put on the vest.
Tire yourself out a bit.
Yeah, but it's like I said, I'm getting stronger without just following the system.
Yeah.
I'm getting stronger anyway, in spite of how short a time invested there is. It's
Absolutely
crazy to me.
I haven't done any gym since I met him, and I did that because when it's not true. I first met him. He came to our event. He did a breakout talk and was like super popular, and so he's sort of from the next year he started doing like on the main stage, and it was like after that event in San Diego that he invited Pam and I to come down and stay at his place on Coronado. And he had sent me the book and all of that, and I'd been trying it in our gym in our condo. But I was doing it with the mindset of all the other gym workouts that I'd ever done and all other people that I'd ever learned from about how to do gym, how many sets and all of that. So he keeps talking about doing this one set, but he's saying, nah, but actually 2 or 3 more would actually be better, obviously, you know.
There's this great phrase he says, which is the slower you go, the sooner we're done.
Yeah. Yeah, because you tire out, your muscles fail, and that's all he needs.
Yeah, until you know what it is to do this really slow rep and try to hold it.
But also what it really feels like to fail.
Right.
So that was the difference for me. We went and stayed with him. We went down to the gym in his complex there, and he took me through a workout. And I was like, oh, this is what failure really was. You know what I mean? Like he made you realize that it's not like getting to the saying, I'm done. You know, it's like when you're at that point, there's probably at least 2 more reps that you can get out of there. You know, if you really, really put your mind to it, and unless you really, really put your mind to it, your muscles don't actually reach that threshold, that failure threshold. You just mentally give up.
Right.
And there's a difference. Your muscles have to actually physically fail, like be spent. And you can't do that unless you're determined enough to work hard. But from that moment when amazingly, that afternoon was one of our San Diego local events, monthly things that we used to have. And so we went up there, since he was in town for those 2 months staying on Coronado. He was actually a speaker at that event. So we went up together, and they happened to have a Dexcom truck there. So we did that not Dexcom, DEXA, the DEXA scan, right?
Right.
And so I had a scan done, and then 3 months later, I had another scan, and I had put on 4 pounds of muscle mass and lost another pound of fat since the last, and I hadn't changed the way I was eating at all. And this was by that stage I was 55 or something, definitely thinking like I was on the decline. And that's why I started trying to do some gym before I met him, because I thought like I got to try and stop the rot, but I was just getting sore and miserable, and my running was getting worse, and my knees were hurting, and but once this started, and literally from that day, twice a week at most, like you say, there's been times when we've been traveling or something like that, and stuff hasn't worked out, and I've missed sometimes even 2 weeks or something. We hadn't worked out at all, but pretty much twice a week. And
even when I've missed out, it's not like it's a total reset.
No,
it's like,
but I'm way no. When you go back, I feel like there's definitely a regression, right? You have to go back down a bit on the weights that you've done or that you were doing, and build back up again. But it's not like you go back to the beginning, right? But I think if I work it out, I've probably put on, since I started, probably 10 pounds in muscle. And I am stronger now. I'm 61. I'm stronger now than, I'm stronger now than I was when I was in my 30s.
I think I'm the strongest
than I've ever been.
Yeah, I think I'm the strongest I've ever been in my adult life.
Yeah.
Maybe ever.
Yeah.
Which, again, I still can't
It's
totally
mind-boggling.
reconcile it, because in my mind, I would assume in order to do that, 2 hours, 3 times a week at least, something like that.
And that's the phenomenal part about it, is that you literally don't. And
so I want to talk about bare feet. When I was at a paleo conference, I want to say ancestral health something. Anyway, one of the speakers I was watching, it looked like she had sandals on, but it turned out it was kind of an illusion she arranged. It was kind of like a lace on one toe that went to her back ankle.
So that's how she gets away with not being asked to put her shoes on.
Right. So she's walking around that way, but I didn't realize that until she stuck her foot up in the middle of a conference to kind of emphasize that no, shoes aren't paleo, because she was very pro paleo.
Right.
And in that moment, I thought, oh, wow. So she's really walking everywhere without shoes, at least when she can get away with it. I'm sure she's probably been caught. But that said, it is an interesting question. Do you like to yourself, you like to do as much as you can shoeless? Is that right?
Totally. And you have to, I literally put shoes on here because, so I often I've got slip-on shoes that I got in my computer bag that I carry when I get on the plane. So I even go on a plane most of the time. I've had twice that it's happened to me where someone's got all full of shit basically and made me wouldn't let me on unless I put shoes on. So I have the slip-on shoes in my bag, so I grumble and moan and slip the shoes on.
But a lot of times people don't notice.
Most of the time, every now and then, like one of the ladies that checking you in at the gate will kind of look down at your feet, but not say anything. And I've actually found out that the rule is that you have to wear shoes, but it's at the air hostess's discretion, or at the staff's discretion. So they don't. It's not like they have to enforce that rule, but if they feel like there's a risk, and most of the time it's like if people are, I think what it's there for is that people put their feet up between the seats and stuff like that, and have their bare foot, and sometimes it can be a bit gnarly, and this way they're able to say like, dude, you need to put your shoes on.
So you were running before. Were you running barefoot?
I was running barefoot, yeah. I got out of it for a while, and I want to try and get back to it at some point. But yeah, I was running up to. I'd got up to by. I think the furthest I did was about 10 miles that I ran on the road, barefoot.
Naturally, the first place my brain goes is safety. Like,
so you become very vigilant, right? On watching where you're running, where you put your feet. But yeah, I think I've stood on a tiny shard of glass once that kind of made its way into the ball of my foot. It was sore, but it didn't stop me from running. But then, like the next day or something, I had to get Pam to get a needle, and twice she's fished stuff out of my feet. But that's twice in 8 years or 7 years, and she's got, I don't know, because I try and I can't get my foot turned around enough that I can actually see properly. And she manages, even though it's literally glass, so it's clear, right? And so she hasn't, somehow she's found it. But outside of that, I've never stood on stuff and cut myself or anything like that.
You just have sole-like calluses on the bottom of your feet.
Yeah, it's not like I've stood on glass and it just hasn't cut me. I think if I stood on a big piece of broken grass, I would cut my foot. But the shoes that I would be wearing if I wasn't going totally barefoot would be all these zero lift shoes and I get them all from Marco Cazella. And he's got a barefoot shoe running shop, basically. And he's the guy that got me into that. He was sitting talking to me about running at dinner in West Palm Beach when he was a speaker there once, many years ago. And sort of started to encourage me to try it. And in the beginning, I bought shoes from him, and I used to run in those shoes. But the whole point of it is zero lift, right? So the natural part of your foot is that you don't have a heel. So you don't have a lift that's shortening your Achilles and your calf muscles and all of that kind of thing that over time causes a lot of problems.
So your heel doesn't fully touch, or
no? So my heel's on the ground now, but the sole of the shoe doesn't have a lift in it, so my foot's flat. It's not like this.
I see. Gotcha.
So for our whole lives, if you look at almost every single, even track shoes or pumps or whatever they call them, you look at it, the heel is higher than the forefoot. So you constantly lifted a bit. Your heel is always constantly lifted a bit off the ground, and so that's not natural. Your heel should be on the same level as the ball of your foot, and what happens when it's not over 30, 40, 50 years is that everything shortens there. Your calf shortens and your Achilles becomes less, the attachment to your Achilles becomes less stressed until you put it down again. And so when you start, especially on distance running and stuff like that, it becomes more and more and more of a problem. People get more and more injuries. And a lot of people that go in fully barefoot running are do it because it's their final thing to try and get over getting injured all the time.
Is there science behind that? Studies on barefoot running versus?
I don't think there's any actual studies. I think it's people's philosophy, and then some people that have started running barefoot and found that they're not developing those same injuries that they used to develop all the time before. But I don't think there's a real study. I think it's we talk about in the food space all the time. Like there's no randomized control trial, to show whether it's better or not. But there's there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that people who try it don't struggle with the injuries that they used to before they started doing it. But you have to adapt slowly because your muscles and stuff have shortened, and you can't just go and suddenly start running, putting that extra stress on it because it's got to lengthen now. So you have to do it in small batches over time and introduce it slowly. But in the beginning, I was running in these shoes. And I, at that time, used to say to myself, I'll never run totally barefoot. Like I saw pictures of and videos of Mark like doing stuff on his website and that, like running on the road barefoot. And I thought, no way, there's never going to do that. But of course, never say never. And then after a while, I started just trying, like I would run, and then on the way back, like stop 100 yards short of the house and take the shoes off and just run the last bit, or I'd go out running barefoot but carry the shoes with me, so that when I felt like my feet were starting to get sore, I would put the shoes on and run with the shoes on for the rest of the way, until after a while I was running and I was getting back with the shoes in my hand, and so then I would start leaving them behind. But again, I'm walking everywhere, walking in shops. There's 2 shops in Corpus Christi that explicitly say like you have to wear shoes. There's on the island, on the Padre Island where we stay, there's like a grocery store, and there's a sign on there that says no shoes, no shirt, no service. And there's Academy Sports that has a thing that says you have to wear shoes. But like I go walking around Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff like that without shoes on, and no one's ever told me to put shoes on.
I think it does matter a little bit how much you're near a coast, because I sort of feel like a lot of times when you're, especially when you're near a beach,
yes, and
it's just going to be more common.
Yes, well, but that's the reason why, like at the grocery store, that because it's a beach, and Corpus Christi is also like a big, what's it like going on right now, spring break place. I think a lot of people are running around in their swimming costume, or the swimming trunks, you guys call it, or something. So maybe they don't want someone like that
or
running into the store,
or maybe somebody who's like tracking in sand or things like
so
that.
at least put on shoes and a shirt and you can come in a store. But like once you get off the island and you're in Corpus Christi proper, no one's asked me to put on HEB, Heb, I call it, which is the big grocery chain thing there. Home Depot, Lowe's. I mean, when we first moved there, I lived in Home Depot, and maybe once someone might have like asked, like, don't you wear shoes? Or they're not like put on shoes, like just fascinated that I wasn't wearing shoes. But then when you go to a restaurant, I kind of feel like I should probably put some shoes on.
Yeah.
And, we were planning to go to dinner tonight after this. And so I actually put shoes on when I came here, which you asked me to take off.
Right.
And normally I don't wear shoes.
Right. Well, we're shoeless home.
Yes, ours obviously is the same. But it's just so weird that I was actually wearing shoes probably the first time in a long time. Most times on the plane, like I said, they don't say anything, but every now and then someone gets snotty, and then I grumble and moan and put on my slip-on shoes and storm off down the ramp. But yeah, I had a big Achilles operation when I was much younger from really bad injuries that I got from running, and on the one side is really a lot of scar tissue and stuff because I got a big infection from running around afterwards before I'd healed and picked up an infection. And so they had to do it a second time. There was a whole, I was in isolation for like 10 days in the hospital because of the staph infection that I got in my foot, and I get gross. I mean, I basically the back of my heel, you could literally see all the granulation tissue had been eaten, skin and granulation tissue had been eaten away, and you could literally see this white Achilles tendon running down to join my heel. It was just like open like that. And
staph infections are not.
It was really bad. And so once they got, it was like there was a drain that was attached, like inserted in. That was, you could actually see it. The pipe from the drain was like literally down there next to my Achilles tendon. You could see the two things like next to each other, and they had this like cellophane type wrapping over the wound, and I had a drip in my arm, and then they had this really, really, really powerful antibiotic that they would come and they would drip like 5 drops in there or something like that, and then wait half an hour, and then they had a vacuum, like a vacuum, I don't know what they call it. It's like a little concertina vacuum thing that you could push closed and clip, and that was attached to the pipe that came out of the drain in my leg, and then I'd take the clips off and it would go and suck the fluid out of my I'm lying, it wasn't in my arm. It used to go down and drop the antibiotics down into that covered wound.
Yeah.
And it would like lie in there for an hour or for half an hour, and then they would suck it out again, and then they would send it off to the lab, and the lab would analyze it, and it took 10 days before that started coming back clear. And then they got the plastic surgeon in to try and fix this mess. And it left a lot of scar tissue down there, and it's actually, shoes are uncomfortable for me. It doesn't kill me, but so when Mark gave me a chance to actually not wear shoes, it was a bargain. Then in winter, I was in San Diego, and then now in Texas. Like we had one cold week in January when we were in Boca, so we weren't even there, and one cold week about 3 weeks ago, and that's it. That's our winter. But when it gets cold, I wear like Uggs or something like that, keep my feet warm, because my toes get chilblains and stuff if they get really cold. But that's the only time they can make me put shoes on.
What do you think is the future of low carb? Do you think it's going to expand? Do you think conferences are going to get bigger? Do you think it might?
Well, what I think or what I hope. Look, so there's a couple of things. I mean, we were talking about like back in 2015, 16 when I started this. There was very little out there that you could learn from or whatever. And over the years, that's got bigger and bigger. And there've been more and more conferences. People come and go thinking they can make money and realize they can't and don't do it again. But these conferences are coming up. Like I was saying, it's kind of stalled. It's the growth in attendance has stalled, but we haven't been throwing money at it or like really promoting like crazy, mainly because we haven't had the money to try and do those promotions. But that was one of the reasons for writing the book, was to try and get out beyond our bubble of our sphere of influence. Pam hates it when I say bubble, but
I think there's this other factor too. I think low carb has gotten big enough that there's this anti-low carb movement out there.
Yeah, it's almost so it was a fad. it was like the most searched term on in Google or something for a while, right?
And you had food companies creating these
Rubbish
Frankenfood products everywhere.
Horrors. Yes, but it's almost like that infatuation is on the downslope, and so now it's going back to the people who genuinely are looking at it because they want to be healthier, or they want to address some kind of chronic condition that they're trying to deal with. But there's just so many doctors that don't believe in it, or refuse to accept it, or have money in the game and won't accept it because of that. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why so many of them won't offer it to their patients. And like you said, I mean,
I feel like, honestly, I just feel like it's just a lack of contact, a lack of experience. I have appreciation for how much doctors will have just patient after patient. One is, I'm into crystal healing. One is, I've heard about fill in the blank supplement and how it's changing the world. And so when the 20th patient comes in, they say, I've been doing low carb. It's, got a lot of saturated fat. I cut out all the fiber. It seems to be doing great for me. I could get how, after the slew of other things that gets brought to their office over and over again, they're just kind of in this general knee-jerk pushback.
Yeah.
But do I think there's a sea change? I think there's some sea change. I think there's some shift outside of the low-carb community with general practitioners, and that more of them are becoming aware than they did before.
Mm.
Doesn't mean they sign on to it right away, but the awareness is always the first step, right? Just to be aware something's out there. And certainly for the diseases of our time, the chronic diseases that we're helping to construct in our population, you hope that they're aware, again, of the option, at least, to present back to the patients. The biggest issue is I think a lot of doctors would agree with me on this. I do think that there's a kind of cornering themselves too often into thinking of solutions in terms of medicine, in terms of a prescription or surgery.
They're trained. I mean,
yeah,
that's their training, and it's the ones with an open mind that I'll get on board with our community. And I often say that, like, the doctors that get it actually should have been engineers, because they're the ones that actually look at something and say, yeah, you know what, this isn't working. Why not?
Yeah, I find that oftentimes if they start becoming aware of it, a lot of clinicians will themselves become, at least, if not advocates, people who bring that option forward.
Or at least offer the option.
Like a Sarah Hallberg or a David Unwin, for example.
Well, Dave Unwin is the story that I often have told, but like as just retelling the story that I've heard. And he had this patient who he was worried about, that she wasn't filling her meds. And he came out and saw someone sitting in the waiting room and said, like, oh, yeah, you must be early. Don't worry. I've got this other patient coming, but then I can fit you in after that. And she said, nuh-uh, it's me. And he didn't recognize her because she had lost so much weight and she was looking so good. And like he got her into the office and said, like, what's going on? And she just said, like, I'm doing keto, basically. Got involved in this Facebook group and they've been helping me, and I don't need your medications anymore. And then I interviewed him in a podcast and sort of told him that I was always used to retell the story. And he said, yeah, Doug, but what you don't know is that she actually yelled at me. He said she was angrier than hell. And basically saying, like, you're my doctor. Why didn't you tell me this? How come you didn't teach me this? And he was mortified. And he immediately went and started researching and trying to learn about this stuff. And he tried to join their Facebook group, and they wouldn't let him because they were finding that doctors were joining up and basically behaving like trolls. And so they wouldn't let physicians join the group. But he could, as he learned more and stuff, and his patients started to realize that he was getting on board, and he kept persisting, and eventually they let him in because he was now actually not trolling, but helping people, you know. And now they had a physician that was actually even saying what they were saying. And obviously he's gone on to do amazing things. But his patient, that's the thing that struck me the most of that whole story, was the fact that when he said, like, his patient was livid with him as her doctor for not teaching her about that.
And I get it. I mean, if I, to apply this back to engineering, if I had some clients who were trying to do a certain task on a certain computer, and all I could give them were the things I knew about, but there were other things, other apps, other operating systems that had I just known and shared it with them, I'm the expert. I'm the one who they're trusting to have the knowledge to meet their needs when it comes to technology. So yeah, I get it. By the same token, I think we can both concede this is not necessarily a state of malice. The vast majority of doctors mean to do well by their patients, but there is a relevance to course correction.
Yeah, so that's my thing. It's like I always used to give them the out, right? Oh, they weren't taught this at med school, so their training is to find a solution with pharmaceuticals. But that was back in 2016 maybe, but if you look at it now, there is so much talk, evidence, stuff out there that if they still refuse to acknowledge that there's even something to at least investigate, then they're guilty of malpractice. That's my personal non-medical opinion.
There's just no getting around it. There's a process to this. I'm a big believer in the 10% rule, which is when there's a major change, you go back to bloodletting, you go back to Marshall and for example, H. pylori, things like that. It's not that a paradigm shifts linearly where it's like 5% this year, 10% the next year, 15% the next year, 20% and so forth for 100 years. It's that it takes a lot of work to get that 10%. But then once there's like a credible 10% of the population that's like, no, this is what makes sense. Mm-hmm. This is what I believe. And I have, these other friends of mine who are experts in this. We're all on board. This is actually the way it should work. Then it's a tipping point. And then very quickly, a whole bunch of other people go, okay, all right, I guess I can kind of see it now.
Yeah. But so going back to attendance and conferences and stuff like that, that's kind of where I'm hoping it's going to go, is where, at the moment there's a bunch of people that are patients that are doing this for themselves because their doctors won't help them, that come to these conferences to learn. But there's also, 70% or so of our attendance is at least practitioners of some kind. And as that tipping point starts to happen, all of these doctors and other practitioners are going to need to learn how to do this. And as they realize that, they're going to hopefully find our organization and maybe some others that provide this kind of training, and it will eventually become an ongoing training mechanism for these practitioners who need to learn. So I feel like it's going to continue, and maybe as that tipping point happens and more people come on board, maybe the numbers will grow. It'll be easier. We won't have to spend as much money and time trying to promote the thing to get a few people to come and attend, because people will be looking to where they can find training, and that's what we'll be able to provide. So, maybe it'll turn into more formal courses and stuff like that. I mean, we have accreditation with the SMHP where they have to submit to a bunch of training through one of the pathways is a bunch of courses through the Nutrition Network, which is a spin-off from the Noakes Foundation. There's one through the NASN, the National Association of Sports Nutrition. Is that guy Jeff Cotterman who runs the gym in San Diego. He's the guy that does our San Diego local meetings and stuff. And he has a course. He's one of the guys that got converted by Brian Lenskes. Like, Brian came back from our event and literally called Jeff and said, "You got everything wrong." Because at that stage we hadn't even met Dr. Ben yet, right? So it was just from the nutrition point of view. And so, Jeff was teaching sports nutrition is all about the carbs. Just like I learned from Tim Noakes about carbohydrate loading and all of that, and how it's like essential to be able to be a distance runner. And so apparently I think he was literally on the sidelines at a high school football match where he was the attending physician in case there was an injury or something. And he was on the phone talking to Jeff. Jeff said, talking of Amway, Jeff's thing is like, I thought he was trying to sell me Amway. But to his credit, by the end of that conversation, he was obviously had enough respect for Brian already that he went off and started looking some of the stuff up that Brian told him about in that. And it was he went and investigated and thought, wow, I really have been getting it wrong. And he changed his entire coaching program. And a lot of, he was he is in the high intensity arena, right? And so massive pushback from a lot of people, his peers, and lost a lot of customers and stuff like that. But rewrote his whole training manual on nutrition. And then in the process of doing that, we met Dr. Ben, and now he's totally on board with Dr. Ben's training. And so his complete package of the nutrition and the physical training part of it is Dr. Ben's stuff and low carb keto.
Wow. Yeah.
But now he literally can't cope. He's got so many people, because now he does only Dr. Ben's training at his gym, and he's flooded. Like, he's turning people away because he just doesn't, he's trying. And also we're trying to find good help is hard. So he's trying to find somebody that he can hire to give him more business. But anyway, his training now is another pathway towards getting accredited with the SMHP. There's a clinical experience. If you've someone like Steve Finney, we can't tell him, I know you have to do a bunch of courses to get accredited with us if he wanted to. So he could write an essay about all his experience and how he implements this in his practice and some of the problems he's had, and you can get accredited that way as well. But the main thing is that people are able to get accredited, use MHP, Metabolic Health Practitioner, after their name, and actually have credibility while practicing this intervention in their practices. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great that you've helped to put that together, and that's a pathway for many.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I was talking about earlier, when we first launched the SMHP, we had no idea if it was going to be another abject failure like everything else I'd done. And the accreditation process is then, so there's people that recognize the value of the SMHP as an organization, and an umbrella supporting organization. But then there's now, on top of that is now, once you're a member, you can go through one of these different pathways and get accredited. And again, we spent a lot of time building that whole accreditation process, and put it out there, and no idea. And people have been flocking to do it. And, it happens a lot. But the most vivid memory of it is the very first person. This is a doctor who did all her training, uploaded all her certificates, and submitted the forms, like applying for accreditation. And sort of had the approval board kind of just have a look at it quickly. But she had done the training. So it's more like when people write the essays and stuff like that, that we need, a couple of people on the review panel to okay that this was good. But if you do the training, you do the training, right? So we decided, okay, yes, she can be accredited. And so I wrote to her and said, congratulations, here's your special little orange badge that you can put on your website and on your emails and stuff. And, you can use the credentials MHP. And she wrote back and she said, Doug, this means more to me than when I became an MD. She said, because now I feel like I can actually really help people. And that was the first time that I'd got that feedback, and all of that stress and angst about whether or not this was actually going to work and be something that people valued kind of culminated in that. And I was like, okay, we're on the right path. We're doing the right thing, It was cool.
I think that's a good spot. Shall we go ahead and move on to the food portion of this podcast?
Okay, sure.
I'm excited to try this out. How do I say it again?
Biltong.
Biltong.
Tong.
Tong.
Yeah, Tong. Tong.
Biltong.
Biltong. That's
Biltong.
it.
All right.
And it's bil. So it must say, like it's Afrikaans, so you flatten the I. So it's not biltong, it's biltong.
Biltong.
No, I say bull.
Bull.
Yeah, almost like bull.
Yeah.
Like biltong.
Biltong. Okay.
Tongue, okay.
Unless there's anything else you want to fit in before we wrap.
No, I don't. I think we spoke a lot.
Quite a bit.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you were able to share your story with us here. I mean, it's quite a journey you've gone on.
Yeah, and maybe just one thing, like, hey, if you want to read about all the real dramas that, I mean, there's the one I kind of spoke about the build up to that first event, and the dramas that we had there, but it went on because we were literally bankrupt. We a few month or so after we went back from San Diego that first time, we actually got evicted we got an eviction notice on our apartment, and I had managed to eventually pay for the travel and whatever I'd agreed to do for all the speakers, and I paid everything, but we had nothing left. I went out to get groceries one day, scrambled some money from somewhere, and came back, and there was this big eviction notice on the door. But in the meantime, we were starting to plan a Florida event, and we started collecting some money from that, and that helped us pay some of the rent, at least, so that they took the eviction notice down, and we managed to get out of that. And why, again, even during those times, it wasn't like, oh, we need to stop doing this and find something else to do. It's just, how do we keep it going? But yeah, it then goes the whole journey through how we built that, and a little bit of, I think what we hadn't talked about personally for me was how it's helped me so much with a brain injury. So I had a really bad motor car accident when I was younger, and
go into that.
Got a really serious TBI. So just come out of the army and was about to go to start work on the mines. I had a bursary from Anglo American, so I had to work that off for 2 years by working on one of the mines. And we were at a triathlon the weekend before, and on the way home turned off to try and stop to get something to drink, and got T-boned, and I smashed my head and I literally, I couldn't see for 3 months.
Wow.
And that's, I couldn't see. I completely couldn't focus. If I looked with one eye, I could kind of see something, but with the two eyes together, people told me that it was like a chameleon, like my eyes used to move independently of each other. And I thought they were bullshitting me, but I read, actually very recently, I actually read that it's a real thing. Like when there's a severe brain injury, that literally does happen.
And so you had persistent symptoms related to that?
Yeah. So my my memory short-term memory is shot, and it's only happened to me once while we've been here, and you helped me very quickly to fix it. But like I go blank and forget what I'm talking about, like really, really easily, and and I've struggled to find words, like stupid, simple words that I use every day, and then suddenly, at some moment when I'm trying to use it, it's gone. And a few times I've done it here where I couldn't think of the word, and I've had to kind of describe what it is that I'm trying to say, because I can't think of that one word that I know is in my vocabulary to say what I want to say. And I was terrified back as an engineer. You do designs and stuff like that, and then you have to present it, right? And the more anxious I get, the worse it is. And so I would get up there and almost always kind of lose track of what I was saying somewhere and feel like I was looking stupid. But I think they all knew that I'd had this accident and sort of tolerated it. And then my work was good, so that just because I couldn't stand up there and vocalize it well, they didn't seem to hold that against me. But as I became more senior and I had other engineers under me, I didn't do another talk ever. It's like, this is a good experience for you, you do you present this design of mine, just so that I didn't have to do it. And in the very first event, one of my main tasks was to find an MC. And I never found the right person. And closer to the time, I eventually thought, well, you know what? Maybe I can do this.
Yeah, I can't imagine your conference without you being the MC.
Georgia Eade had a couple of years later, when she spoke in West Palm Beach the very first time, we went to dinner afterwards, and I was telling her about all of this stuff. And she said, this is before the mental health stuff has all exploded now, right? She's saying back in those 10 years ago, like, I'm seeing with my patients that when they go on this diet, that their anxiety and stuff goes away, and that they become a lot more relaxed. And that kind of explained in retrospect why before I started this, I would never in a million years have got up on that stage. I would have told Pam to do it or something. If it, even if she didn't feel like she could do it, I don't care. I'm not doing it. But now, by the time that event came around, I'd been in a couple of years on this and decided, like, yeah, maybe I can do this. And it took me a couple of years before I really did go blank on stage. And it happened in San Diego when I was introducing Georgia Ede to the stage. How weird was that? And I hadn't told anybody about it before. I kind of ran off the stage and said, "Oh, Georgia, just come up," because I was going to tell her like a little anecdote or story about her, and I just went blank. So afterwards, when I got back up, I said, "Okay, well, sorry about that brain fart, but this is the story." And for the very first time, I told people that I had this problem, and I said, like, if I appear like a deer in the headlights or something, there's someone in the front row here, just remind me what I was talking about, and maybe I'll be able to pick it up again. So my anxiety about it was gone. I was also realizing that this crowd was with me, and that they were supporting me, and that they were okay with this, and that I didn't have to be perfect, and that if I did forget I was saying, so what? So what?
Exactly.
But it wasn't until that moment that I actually came to that realization. And it's been quite a journey as far as that goes. And it's one of the big things that, like I said, knee problems and all those things started clearing up. But it was also, I think, if I really think about it, the biggest improvement for me, or change for me, was better cognition and better or the reduction of that anxiety about everything, not just about standing up on the stage at an event, and now we've seen in the last couple of years, the whole mental health space has just exploded.
Yeah.
With the realization of how much this intervention can help.
Big shout out to Metabolic Mind.
Yes.
I mean, they're just changing the world.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. And tomorrow I'm going to Arizona to meet up with a group of them, with Brett and Jambazuki and stuff, to talk about how all our different groups can work together to get more done. But they are at the forefront of getting this message out there now, not just in the mental health space, but just overall as well. So yeah, amazing stuff. It started with Georgia telling me that I shouldn't be so anxious when back in the day.
Yeah, and I will say it is a trust factor. You do want to trust that you're in a room full of the biggest supporters you could imagine.
Right. Yeah.
I have, I'll tell you something kind of embarrassing on my end. In the film, you see me get very emotional at one point. Mm-hmm. It's a very cathartic moment, because it was huge, that moment for me, and the camera catches it. And as you know, it's literally why I have done the experiments I did. I got to where I was, is I have these obsessive compulsive disorder aspects that have been great for science, but at the same time, they can also hold me back from lots of things.
Yeah.
But it's trying to get in touch with that trust, that not just the trust in the people around you and support you, but in what you're doing. What you're doing is helping. And certainly I hope that you get that, Doug, that you get how many people, even beyond the ones that are talking to you, that have talked to me, to tell me about how thankful they are for your conference and for your efforts and everything you've been able to do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks.